Someone make it make sense.
I'll be a couple.
Hello, hello. How is everybody doing? Welcome on in. Happy to be back with you guys. Love our squirrel friends here. Shout out to James. Shout out to Franks. What a big day, huh? So, okay. Now that we've all had some time to process what all happened today, we are back here. We are going to be recapping today. Shout out to DSN. Happy to see you, my friend. Recapping today, and well, recapping / going in through some things in more detail. We are also going to be going through the hearing that happened at the end of the day, which was cut off from the court TV feed. So I've not even seen it yet. I have no idea what happens, but apparently it's about ARCA. That's all I know. And we're going to watch that as well. And I also do have the filing that was referenced that we're actually about to hear about in just a second here. This opening, this day one of the retrial started out with like a mess, right? And so, yeah, so we're going to go back through it. And when we get to the part about the filing, we are going to pull up the filing. All right, cool. Everyone ready? Let's go.
This court is in session. Please be seated.
2282 CR 117, the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed.
So, good morning. I see all counsel are present. I see all counsel are present. Nobody said anything to Mr. Clerk about needing to see me, but I received 4 motions over this weekend that I assume we need to at least talk about briefly. Commonwealth's motion.
What do you all think about her curtain they've added there? Maybe it could have done with a bit of ironing. I wonder if they just unpackaged it. I mean, look, it's a bit of a mess, but I like the color.
Regarding defense opening statement, I think the first 2 motions we can do quickly. I'm not issuing an order. Mr. Breenan, the defense knows third-party culprit will not be in the opening. If you think that their opening goes beyond it, you can object. Defendant's opposition to the Commonwealth's request for use of independent readers, because there's an objection, the defendant's motion's allowed. So you have an independent reader. Is it fair to say that the 3rd and 4th motions, Commonwealth motion to enforce compliance with court's April 16th ARCA discovery order and the Commonwealth's motion to preclude new expert testimony or alternatively to continue the trial date, that those motions will take a little bit of time, Mr. Breenan?
I don't think I'll be long in my argument.
I think that I need more information on one of them. And I think we'll do that at the end of the trial. I mean, at the end of today, we'll hear both these motions.
So again, that's the hearing that, again, I forgot. By the time we got to the end, court TV feed ended, and I had forgotten that she had said this. So, I mean, I don't know why court TV just ended the feed, but anyway, this feed has it. So,
Jackson, I did see that a list of text messages, 100 or so, is in your response to my order on Friday.
Okay, so before we get into the text messages, so let me pull this up. Okay, let's read this filing. Let's do this. So DSN saying it's hard to get back into this trial, starting back at the beginning after everything the first trial put us through. Yeah, I totally, I'm sure that there's a lot of people that feel that way. Yeah, I mean, all we can hope for is a fair trial, right? And that's, I guess, part of the challenge with this one. So let me just unshare, reshare. I mean, I don't know. Knowing what we know about the jury from last time and what they thought, it's like, really, it seems like the biggest issue if you're the defense, and it has to do with ARCA, and that's the problem here, right? Is they found ways to just completely, as you guys know, just discredit them, right? Because of the whole third party thing. And I don't know. I think that I just hope there's a way that they can figure out how to, with having that knowledge now, right? They might have a way to do it where they, and again, there's still so much going on with ARCA. Who knows what will happen, right? But at this juncture, it's like, knowing what they know now, maybe there's ways that they can ask questions more specifically, like, I don't know, were you hired by an insurance company? No. Were you hired by Turtle Boy? No. I mean, I don't know. I'm just giving examples to where the things that people, from what we heard, right, the jury last time, what they thought the other possibilities could be that gave them permission to just discard this testimony, right? Or discredit it. So in other words, I guess I'm trying to think of like, if the worst case scenario, they still can't ask about, they can't even mention, they can't get into questioning about like the DOJ, right? Even if they don't mention the investigation, right? And they did a motion for reconsideration. She's like, no, like with careful and strategic questioning, there's probably ways that they can still alleviate some of the concerns that were had from the first trial by some of those jurors, if that makes sense. Bev was more fair than usual today. Are you referencing the hearing at the end of the day? Because that's, again, I have no idea. I haven't seen that yet. Okay, but let's take a look here. So this is, can you guys even believe this from the Commonwealth over the weekend? I said this earlier when we saw this, like, if this had been the defense filing this, she would have slaughtered them all. Like, unbelievable. Like, over the week, it blows my mind. Commonwealth's motion to preclude new expert testimony or alternatively to continue the trial date. The Commonwealth hereby moves that this court preclude the defense experts from testifying to any experiments and or opinions which were not provided to the Commonwealth prior to April 15th, 2025. So this is interesting because remember, she had already said, because we already covered this filing where she said like any other ongoing tests or whatever, as soon as they have that done, turn it over, right? And the Commonwealth didn't like that answer. And why? Well, because that was going to be for rebuttal, right? The ongoing testing that might be happening or any subsequent reports would be in rebuttal to Judd Welcher. And clearly the Commonwealth is trying to stop that from happening by saying they're like, this is crazy. In the alternative, the Commonwealth requests that this court just discharge the current jury and continue the trial of this matter until June 1st, 2025. Incredible. In support of this request, the Commonwealth states the following. Wow. Dr. Bob, welcome. Happy to see you again. Right. And that's the thing. I totally, and the attorneys, there's a lot that for me feels like this is a brand new trial in a lot of ways. Right. I think really it definitely, it'd be different even if you just kept all the same attorneys, right? Let's just say it was exact, you still had Lolly and everybody, that would be very different. But with all the new faces even, right? And then the new experts and all the new stuff, like it really, to me, it feels very fresh. It feels like a new trial to me in a lot of ways. So that's true. She did some of the objections from the Commonwealth. She was fair about that for the defense for sure. Yeah. And we will get into more of that. I mean, again, it was all, as we were watching earlier, it was like, there was just so many shocking things happening all at once, right? It was like a lot to process, which so I'm glad we're going back through. So anyway, okay. So in support of this request, the Commonwealth states the following. One, since the defendant was indicted in this matter, the Commonwealth's theory of the case has been that the defendant put her SUV into reverse and struck John O'Keefe on January 29th, 2022, causing his death. Two, prior to the defendant's first trial, the defense made a decision to utilize the ARCA experts to testify at trial to dispute the Commonwealth's theory. Three, after the first trial, this court set new discovery deadlines to ensure that the retrial would begin on April 1st, 2025. Four, the Commonwealth retained Dr. Judd Welcher as an accident reconstructionist. Pursuant to the court's discovery order, the Commonwealth provided the defendant with the data, opinions, and report of Dr. Welcher on January 31st, 2025. I have to also note, remember when Breenan early on referenced Kenny Kinsey? It's clear to me that they tried to get him, right? And he took a look and whatever his findings were was not in support of the Commonwealth's theory and that they didn't use him. It seems like he was actually the first person that Breenan reached out to, because that was like in like the second hearing since he joined that he started dropping that name. And I even said, I was like, this will be really interesting because if they don't use him, you know, anyway. So they happened to find a guy who they thought they could use anyway. So, and they reported Dr. Welcher on January 31st, 2025. Okay. Number 5, although the defense had already decided several months ago to utilize the ARCA experts again at the retrial and not retain a new accident reconstructionist, they waited until February 2025 to seek permission from the U.S. Attorney's Office, even for ARCA to testify, much less to allow ARCA to perform. This is not how I remember this going. I remember this like they didn't have to seek permission because the U.S. Attorney's Office would tell them when they were released. What do you guys remember? Anything different from that? Much less to allow ARCA to perform new testing and to form new opinions. They don't need to seek permission. What? Okay. So this is very odd because we know that it wasn't until, gosh, when was it? March 28th or something like that, right? I mean, I think it was March 28th, the date when the DOJ finally said, okay, we're releasing them. They're not hired by us anymore, right? Or whatever. So, and I don't know why, if the defense is hiring them, they would need to seek permission to allow them to perform new testing. This doesn't make any sense to me. And again, I think that this is probably what they're going to be arguing at the hearing at the end of the day that we didn't hear earlier. So maybe we will find out more information. Okay. Number 6, the defense reciprocal discovery deadline expired on March 6, 2025. Number 7, despite numerous requests by the Commonwealth, no new discovery regarding the ARCA experts was provided to the Commonwealth. However, as we will hear in a second, and we heard earlier, they did turn over something like 100 text messages. So, okay. 8, as this court knows, a jury has been impaneled in this matter and opening statements were scheduled for April 22nd, 2025. Number 9, on April 21st, 2025, the defense provided the Commonwealth with notice that ARCA is presently engaged in preliminary force lab testing. ARCA experts have all laboratory and field testing completed. ARCA expects to have all laboratory and field testing completed by the end of the week and or early next week. All preliminary reports associated with the testing will be completed by the end of the week, no later than May 1st, 2024. Right, so they've not passed that deadline, absent any unexpected delays in shipping. And Judge Bev said this was fine. Number 10, despite it being on the eve of opening statements, the Commonwealth still does not know all the opinions of the ARCA witnesses. Assuming the defense disclosure to be accurate, it will be another 2 weeks before the results of their experiments and opinions will be forthcoming. And again, what the defense has said, as they've discussed this previously, right, is like, well, they couldn't formulate anything else new because they were waiting on the discovery and what Judge Welcher was going to do. And we didn't even know if he was going to be allowed because there were motions to exclude him and all this and that. And that by the time the DOJ said that's fine, you can hire him. And then also by the time they got the Judge Welcher shit in, you know, it's like, this is why they're still working on this. That's how I understand this back and forth having gone so far. Oh, Kurt's here. Hi, Kurt. Welcome. Hey, I was bummed to see that your bee fish watch didn't work the first time around, but I really hope you do another one because I adore the bee fish. And yeah, so I know you gave it your all. And also it can't be easy working with that thing on your eye. I'm sure there's an actual name for it, but anyway, hopefully you won't give up because we love the bee fish. Awesome. Great. Order more parts, another try in 3 weeks. Love it. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Happy to see you again. Okay. So, right. Number 11, Dr. Welcher, the Commonwealth's expert, will not be available to even review the ARCA disclosures until May 7th because he is away from May 1st through May 6th. Oh, God. All right. This is just, all right. Additionally, the Commonwealth intended to call Dr. Welcher as a witness on or around the following week, May 12th through 16th, which also involves travel. Okay. Number 12, it is extremely unlikely that the Commonwealth and its expert can prepare for the experimentation and opinions of the ARCA witnesses. Number 13, this court has, keep making it bigger. This court has the discretion to sanction parties for their discovery violations. The court should consider the strategic decisions made by the defense on relying on ARCA. So Breenan made this argument bit at one of the recent hearings. Oh my God, they're all blurred together. The recent hearing, right? Like what he's trying to do here, I think, is kind of imply that they chose ARCA on purpose. This is really gross to me. They chose ARCA on purpose instead of hiring somebody else, simply because then they could have excuses of like, oh, well, we couldn't do this or that, and da da da, and like the DOJ, and in other words, these discovery issues that what he perceives to be these discovery issues, right? That like they chose ARCA for that purpose. And it's crazy because, ARCA had already testified previously, as everybody here knows, right? But this is, it's such a bold accusation to make, because he very well knows, right, that if they were to hire brand new experts and not use ARCA this time around, that they would have to shell out a ton of money, right? Here you have ARCA, who they've already worked with before, but also the vast majority of their testing has already been completed and was paid for by the DOJ, right? As we know, they had to pay for their travel time and testimony and whatever the first trial. And I'm sure we know they're going to be paying for this additional testing. However, that's completely different than having experts coming in starting from scratch, where you're having to pay for everything. And so obviously and also they're the most qualified people on the planet to be doing this. So why would you use anybody else? Right. So yeah. Dr. Bob showing some love to Uncivil. Awesome. 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 Welcome in, Angel D. Happy to see you. So, and Kurt, if you're still listening, I wanted to also say that I totally understand what the recent video that you made about not chasing down all the rabbit holes in chat. I totally understand what you're saying. I would always see that happening, and I was always like, my heart goes out to you, because it's like addressing people that are just probably trolling in a certain sense, right? And just trying to act like they know more than you when they're not an attorney and you are. And as far as it being exhausting, I totally understand. I totally could, like, what I will say is this: I applaud you for trying as long as you did when it's unnecessary, because it's like a impossible task to try. Some people, it's like they will never be satisfied. And most people wouldn't have tolerated it and what's the right word? Engage with that as long as you did. You probably hung on the longest with that, but totally fair to not engage with that type of thing anymore. So yeah. Okay. Okay, this court has the discretion to sanction parties for their discovery violations. The court should consider the strategic decisions made by the defense on relying on right, that grossness, and the fact that the defense has been in possession of the Commonwealth's disclosures for almost 3 months. This court should preclude the ARCA experts from presenting any new opinions or experiments. In the alternative, this court should discharge the present jury before they are sworn. So he's giving Bev 2 options, which is crazy, right? 2 options. Either preclude them from presenting any new opinions or experiments. So in other words, they can't rebut the Commonwealth expert, or continue the trial. You gotta be kidding. It's crazy. It's craziness, y'all. In order for the defense to provide some information, allow Commonwealth to provide probably. Wow. I can't wait to see what happens at the end of the day when they have the hearing about this, because this is just craziness. Okay. So now we are going to hop, now that we just have read this, we're going to hop back over to them talking about it from this morning. So let me just unshare, reshare real quick. Okay. Excellent. Here we go.
Did you provide the text messages themselves?
No, Your Honor.
All right. In light of that, and the fact that we don't have time, this juror has been waiting for as many as 3 weeks now, I'm going to prohibit you from mentioning ARCA in your opening statement. And then we'll deal with this later today. I ordered those text messages and they weren't delivered. So we're going to be bringing the jury in. I'll be in recess for 5 minutes.
On that, I think the court respectfully may be factually incorrect on a key assumption of what Your Honor is ruling.
5 minutes, Mr. Lessie.
Mr. Jackson couldn't give the facts. I would like to hear the law.
That's more than 5 minutes. I'll see you at sidebar. Come up here.
Oh God. Okay, so we're gonna jump ahead. They have their sidebar. And again, apparently there's some stuff that the court TV feed did not capture, in addition to the hearing at the end of the day, that this feed has. So we have the OnlyFan. Yay, OnlyFan. Okay. There we go. So, okay. So this is where they're going to do the jury instructions. We're going to skip ahead to the opening statements. Wow, she reads those quickly. Holy crap. All right. All right. So, okay.
If you inadvertently trial or discuss the aspect you to keep. So it's
Okay, so here's the thing. So we watched these obviously earlier, but I wanted to break these down in detail. So we're going to be doing that now. And you guys, I'm sure by this point have seen this probably numerous times. But anywho, one thing that I love is how it starts out with him having to move some equipment out of the way. Great. Great.
At 6:04 a.m. on January 29, 2022, the alarm bell sounded in the Canton Fire Department. Firefighter paramedic Timothy Nuttall knew what that meant. His heart skipped a beat. He raced to his equipment and he picked up his bag, which was meticulous. There was a sign and a signal, and then there was a voice commanding that there was cardiac arrest.
All right. Here's what I like about what he did here with this. He's painting a scene. He's painting a picture. Like his goal here is to help the jury, and everyone listening, us included, right? It's like he's taking you there, or that's his goal, right? He wants you to be there and imagine it. So you get, almost like an author writing a book, right? Where you get the visual, the imagery, and he's taking you there. He's setting the scene. But what I thought was weird is that this scene is all about Mr. Nuttall. That's why when we watched this earlier, right off the bat, I was like, I bet they're gonna call him as their first witness, because he really talks about Mr. Nuttall like a lot. And so it's like, okay, great idea to like you want to paint the scene. You want to take, I think that's a good way to start. But why is it about Mr. Nuttall though? Like, okay, but let's keep watching.
The most serious of calls for a firefighter and paramedic, that means that a person's heart has stopped. He didn't know who it was. He didn't know where it was. He took his bag. He had just gotten to the station and he rushed to the ambulance. He was one of the most secret paramedics that morning. Another paramedic, Anthony Flamati, would be running this mission. He jumped in the back of the ambulance, the door shut, and they headed off to 34th Fairview Road. As they drove, firefighter Nuttall could not see anything. He couldn't hear anything other than the engine of the ambulance. He could feel it sliding across the road. It was near blizzard conditions. He calmed himself. He steadied himself. This is what the firefighters and paramedics are trained to do, to focus. And he focused on his task. He looked around the back of the ambulance to make sure all the tools were in place. The ambulance was meticulous as well. This was Anthony Flamati's ambulance, and it was well stocked.
And the thing about this, right, and I said this earlier, he ends up really trying to portray Mr. Nuttall as like the hero, like a hero, the hero, whatever. But listen to, okay, what was I going to say here? Like, okay, here it is. Okay, this part.
The road. It was near blizzard conditions. He calmed himself. He steadied himself. This is what the firefighters and paramedics are trained to do, to focus.
This is what he's trained to do. It's like the amount of detail he's going into here, right? Like if you're this jury, and if this was any trial, right? And like the opening statements, who are they going to start talking about first, right? Is it going to be the victim? Is it going to be the defendant, right? Like I said, setting the scene and all that, painting a picture. It's all about Mr. Nuttall. So if I'm on this jury at this point, I'm like, Mr. Nuttall is really important, right? He's really, really, really important to like in the Commonwealth's mind, right? Like, or, them not knowing anything about this case, right? It's like, he's really important to this case. He's a really important figure. Almost again, replacing like a defendant or a victim, which is what usually you might be talking about here, or at least somebody who, you know, maybe the person that found the body, for example, not in this case, but in other cases, right? Where it's like, you know, a person finds a body and calls out somebody who's really in like an integral part of the case, right? Like that's what you would be thinking. That's what it seems like he's trying to convey. But he's also really trying to build up Mr. Nuttall's credibility. And it makes a lot more sense when we get to Mr. Nuttall's testimony as to why he's choosing to spend so much of his time in opening statements. Well, okay, first of all, starting with this, but also using so much time focusing on Mr. Nuttall, right? It's like, he's really not that important, right? In the grand scheme of things. However, the reason is because that whole I hit him thing is so important to the Commonwealth's case. And turns out, right, it's a hot mess, as we will watch again, because it's amazing. So it's just when you think about the priorities, right, in the opening statement, this to me is like, with what we know, right, is like, in a way, showing their hand because of how much time, attention, and emphasis and just the type of languaging being used to talk about Mr. Nuttall really shows like how much importance, like in other words, like Hank Breenan is like hanging his hat on the jury buying Mr. Nuttall's testimony, really. I mean, that's kind of the takeaway.
And he focused on his task. He looked around the back of the ambulance to make sure all the tools were in place. The ambulance was meticulous as well. This was Anthony Flamatti's ambulance, and it was well stocked. He calmed himself and he thought about what was going to happen. What should he be looking for? What is his next steps? He played the scenario through his mind, and every calm was about him. As the car pulled up to 34th Fairview, the ambulance.
Notice that you said the word calm. We're going to talk about this, about how these opening statements were really interesting. Calm. It's a calm thing, right?
Every calm was about him.
An area. What is he saying? It's hard to, it's so quiet.
He played the scenario through his mind, and every calm was above him.
An airy calm was above him. So the subtitles are right, but that's very weird. An airy calm was above him. What does he mean? Like an angel? I don't know. Anyway.
As the car pulled up to 34th Fairview,
calm. Everything's calm. Everything's calm because he's so prepared, and the ambulance is so meticulously stocked, and it's just, he's done this a million times and he's the expert. Like he's portraying a certain vibe, right? Again, we're going to talk more about this. So.
And he stepped out into Bedlam. He could hear a woman screaming and shrieking, the cold, hard air slapping on his face, and the wind, blizzard conditions swirling around him. You will hear him tell you how he trudged towards those screams in the darkness to snow. And when he got there, he saw 3 women surrounding a man lying, not moving on the ground. He walked up to the man and he reached down and he tried to find any signs of life, pulse, anything. And he found nothing. And he got up and he walked over to the woman, and he walked over to that defendant, Karen Reed, and he told her that he thinks that man is gone. And then he heard the yell from Anthony Flamatti, the chief, and he said, "Come back, let's go." Because you'll learn that in the cold, even if somebody's heart stops, even if they're presumed to have passed, sometimes you can still save a life. So you'll see on a Dashcam video, you'll hear from testimony, he went back to that man who's John O'Keefe. He went back to him, and that crew, coordinated effort, they did everything they could to save his life. They got on their knees, they began CPR, and firefighter Nuttall will explain, as he kneeled over John O'Keefe, he looked up, and the defendant approached him, and you'll see it on the video. Now, he wanted any information.
Well, it's kind of hard to see on the video.
Are they on drugs, medication? Do they have a heart condition? And he looked up at Miss Reed and he said, "What happened?" And you'll hear her words through firefighter Nuttall. She said, "I hit him."
You'll hear her words through firefighter Nuttall. It's like, so you won't hear her words. Like, you know, he's almost setting that up as if to suggest that you're going to actually hear anyway.
Heart condition. And he looked up at Miss Reed and he said, "What happened?" And you'll hear her words through firefighter Nuttall. She said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." And it was at that time, through the words of the defendant, that she admitted what she had done that night, that she hit John O'Keefe. Now, those words didn't mean anything to firefighter Nuttall. They weren't in context. They didn't reconcile with the injuries. It didn't help him in his treatment, so he ignored it.
And I pointed this out earlier. I think this is really interesting. He says this a couple times, and it comes up in the questioning about how the words don't reconcile with the injuries.
John O'Keefe. Now, those words didn't mean anything to firefighter Nuttall. They weren't in context. They didn't reconcile with the injuries. It didn't.
I just don't understand because he's saying, like, am I missing something? He's saying that the words I hit him don't match up with the injuries. So, I mean, like I said earlier, I was like, if I was on the jury, I'd be like, so can we go home now? Like, what? I mean, I am of the opinion that yes, I agree. His injuries don't match up with him being hit, by a car. Like, I mean, I just don't, I don't get it.
Help him in his treatment, so we ignored
Wally, right?
Firefighter Nuttall is not a police officer. He is not an investigator. He is not a detective. He's a first.
There he is. Which was
Take that information. It was useless to him. He continues to work on John O'Keefe, trying to save his life. You'll see the team put him on a
Twiz, when are you going to utilize your special privileges ever again and come on the show?
stretcher. And when they lift him from the ground, even though there is snow accumulating, underneath John O'Keefe is simply grass, hard ground.
Hard. This is right up your alley, Twiz, right? This is the hard as a rock business right here, man.
Underneath John O'Keefe is simply grass, hard ground, frozen. And beneath his body laid his cell phone.
All right, so he's saying simply grass. The thing is that they can't have it both ways. We kind of brought this up a little bit earlier. There was a light dusting, right? Everybody talked the light dusting. We all know the light dusting. We see it when they're leaving the waterfall, right? We see how much snow there is. How would there be no snow? Now, if it's because his body was warm enough to have melted it, right, then the thing that Candace brought up earlier, shout out to Candace for this point, about the blood on his head being dried, on the back of his head, the blood was dried. So if he was warm enough to have melted the light dusting of snow on the grass to where it's just grass, anyway, if anything was wet, basically, right, then how was the back of his head, how was the blood dried? Anyway.
They bring him to the ambulance, and while they bring him to the ambulance, you see on the videos,
No time like
first responders will speak to the defendant. One first responder, for Maddie, she will say, I hit him, oh my God, I hit him. And then she was interviewed or asked questions for background information, not a criminal investigation, just background to try to help John. And she was asked questions about his background, and during that conversation, you won't hear see the defendant with a person by the name of Jen McCabe and a firefighter McLaughlin. And she tells Fire McLaughlin, the third first responder, I hit him. They bring Mr. O'Keefe to the American Hospital, and his body is cold. The doctors work feverishly. They treat him, trying to save him. They try to warm his core. And unfortunately, firefighter Nuttall's first instinct is accurate. John O'Keefe passed. So why are we here today? We are here today because John O'Keefe was killed by the actions and conduct of that defendant, Karen Lee. You will learn in this case through facts, science, and data, you will learn that on January 29th, 2022, when the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe were in front of 34 Fairview Road, all the way to the left side in a dark corner near a flagpole, you will learn that Mr. O'Keefe got out of the car, got out, and he stood by the side of the road after an argument with the defendant. That argument, that anger fueled by heavy intoxication.
Y'all, look at Mr. Alessi's face on that one. Look at Mr. Alessi's face. Wow.
Argument with the defendant. That argument, that anger fueled by heavy intoxication.
Love it.
Learned from the science and data as he stood by the side of the road. The
Mark was
defendant,
here.
her SUV, drove away. She drove at least 35 feet away. The argument was over. It had ended. But then she stopped. She stopped. She put the Lexus.
Dr. Bob was here. Jason was here.
She waited. And the facts and the science and data will tell you that despite the fact the argument was over, she then put the Lexus into reverse, put her foot on the gas pedal, and began to press, not 25%, not 50%, up to 75% acceleration. There was a light dusting of snow. The Lexus tire spun backwards. She went backwards at least 70 feet. She clipped John O'Keefe. He fell backwards, hit his head, broke his skull, and there he lay at the corner of Fairview.
Okay, so this really bothered me, this whole thing. I don't know that did anyone else hear anyone else get bothered by this? I mean, is it just me? Is it just me? This whole bit about the clipping.
There was a light dusting of snow. The Lexus tire spun backwards. She went backwards at least 70 feet. She clipped John O'Keefe. He fell backwards, hit his head, broke his skull.
She clipped him. I mean, does this sound like, okay, they had an argument. He's trying to make it, look at his tongue, make it seem like, so they had an argument. The whole thing about, if you're suggesting there's an which he is, there's an argument, right? And then she slams down on the pedal in reverse, right? That's an intentional act because you're mad, like intending to hit him, right? Like clipping has the connotation of like you accidentally, bump into something, right? Like you clip it. There's just so much. Yeah, I'll totally make that for you though. Also, Dr. Bob points out very astutely, 35 feet puts her well into the neighbor's yard. Thank you for that, Dr. Bob. For anyone who doesn't know Dr. Bob is a retired physics teacher and school principal and has served as a foreperson on Massachusetts juries twice and also has been to 34 Fairview. So we love Dr. Bob. We also love Bandit. Our hearts go out to you and also Mrs. Dr. Bob and to Bandit, who has crossed over the Rainbow Bridge. And I can't think too much about it or I'll start crying. We love Bandit. So yeah, I'll tell Nightbot Angel to set this up for you. You got it. So yeah, I mean, not to mention it's like impossible to drive like in reverse at those speeds. Like the world records for people that do that are like stunt drivers is like still like less than what they said the speed was in the first trial. So anyway, okay. But the clipping, she clipped him. Anyway, just
He lay at the corner of Fairview Road on the ground, lying on top of his cell phone, alone. And then the defendant will later tell that when she left, he didn't look mortally wounded, yet he was. And she simply drove away. Now, before I tell you about the data and the facts and the science, and I walk you through that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe was a young man, a local kid, very well liked. Well, John O'Keefe is the son of Peggy O'Keefe.
now I'm going to skip ahead again. We listened to all of this earlier, but I'm going to skip ahead to the parts where we can break down more of the facts of the case. And okay, here we go.
You will see that when he would ignore her calls, they would become incessant. When he would try to push away, she would come closer. You will read those text messages and you will realize that this was the beginning of the end of this relationship. That night, they decided they would go out together. I want to tell you something about data and science before we get to that night. I mentioned that underneath John's body was a cell phone. A cell phone is an amazing piece of technology. It is like a computer.
This is another thing that, did anyone else notice this? Like, I feel like I'm like, is this just me? Because this whole thing with the cell phone is really, really weird, but also it's an amazing piece of technology. I think the jurors know what cell phones are. Angel, do you want any emojis in your command, by the way?
We'll get to that night. I mentioned that underneath John's body was a cell phone. A cell phone is an amazing piece of technology. It is like a computer. It carries extraordinary data. And when they found the cell phone, the only thing they found that night, they studied the cell phone, and there'll be some remarkable data that you will use in this case to find the truth. I want to mention 3 different things you will find in a cell phone that are critical to this case. The first is called location data. Waze, we've all heard of, Google Maps. Well, at some point that night, John put his Waze on, and Waze is like a breadcrumb that will show exactly where the phone goes second by second. It is the strongest, most accurate location data that you can have. And that night, John was using Waze. It also will have.
I mean, I'm sure that was objectionable because that's what you guys all know that we could go way off on it and not really a tangent, but the whole thing with the location data. And I don't think Breenan understands it at all because what his wording here makes no sense. So is Breenan from the future? Breenan, I don't even know where Breenan's from. Heavy flirting? What are you talking about there, Twiz? Romantic design, maybe? right?
At some point that night, John put his Waze on, and Waze is like a breadcrumb that will show exactly
It's
where.
a breadcrumb.
Second by second. It is the strongest, most accurate location data that you can have.
I mean, because the thing is, like, okay, Waze is an app. It's not data. It's an app. I'd never heard of it till this trial, but it's just an app, right? The data, it doesn't. Oh my god, it doesn't have its own technology. All it's doing is using the technologies that the phones have and putting it into an app so that you can access it. That's all it is. It doesn't have its own abilities. Like, it's utilizing, as we know, all of the different location data in the numerous ways that a cell phone collects it, and it's putting it into one app. So it's, anyway, he doesn't understand clearly. So.
And that night, John was using Waze. It also will have healthcare data. Healthcare data will show when somebody is moving. Sometimes it's qualified as steps, but it doesn't necessarily mean somebody's stepping, moving their arms, walking, turning. It doesn't
Oh my
show
God, just
what
flashbacks to
direction
Murdoch
or
on that.
but it shows movement of a person. Okay. And the third thing, remarkably, will be an expert in this case, who found the data file on the phone, and it tracks the temperature of the cell phone battery. That will be critical to your analysis in this case, the temperature of the cell phone battery. And so with that, I want to take you back to the timeline of that night.
He does go into a lot about the cell phone battery. I don't understand. Do you guys understand what is, besides using, like, he ends up doing this weird thing, like trying to make the phone seem like a person. But apart from that, I don't know why the temperature of the cell phone battery. I mean, I have no idea where he's going with this, basically. Do you guys? I mean,
after the discord, both the defendant and Sir Keith decided they would meet at a bar called McCarthy's. Now, McCarthy's is a local bar, a blizzard is pending, and people are getting together in a celebratory mood. They go to McCarthy's, and you'll see a video of McCarthy's, and you will watch both Sir Keith, friends, and the defendant drinking alcohol. And you will count 8 vodka drinks that the defendant drank. They arrive at 8:50, they stay till 9:45. She consumes at least 7 of those drinks in less than 2 hours. The last drink, you'll see when they leave the bar, she puts it under her jacket, and they walk out and they go to another bar to meet other friends called the Waterfall. They reach the Waterfall sometime around 10 p.m. And when they go into the Waterfall, you'll see a video. And when I said celebratory mood, you will see a group of friends of John O'Keefe, many who are friends with Karen through John, and you'll see them clapping and happy and joyous that they're there. You'll see many hugs between John O'Keefe and his friends and the defendant and many of the people there. And they spend some time together, they're drinking, and they all do a shot. And that will be at least the 8th drink within 3 hours that you consume. You will see from this data, not just the cell phone data, but there's some other very important data. And the other piece of data that goes hand in glove with the cell phone is information on the defendant's Lexus vehicle chip. Black box in an airplane, when there's some type of event that captures a small amount of time. Well, that was captured in the defendant's Lexus. That black box information with the cell phone data will tell you everything you need to know in this case. It will bring us step by step through the entire night to the death of John O'Keefe. And so he's
saying that the vehicle data is going to take them step by step through the entire night. I mean, I think he wishes that he had what I think he wishes he had what they had in Murdoch, right? Angel, do you like your command, by the way?
The Waterfall Bar at 12:12, and you'll see that the ignition goes on to the defendant's Lexus. And both John O'Keefe and the defendant in the car, they decide that they're going to go back to 34th Fairview Road, what we talked about earlier. They're going to go there for a get together for one of the homeowner's sons who's having a birthday party. And so as they drive back, follow them to this location data. When they go back to Fairview, they don't know exactly where it is, and they get lost. And so John O'Keefe makes a phone call with one of his friends, Jen McCabe. And during that phone call, the defendant listens to it because she recounts it. And trying to get directions, Jen McCabe tells John O'Keefe, it's near Bella's mom's house. You'll learn that Bella, or her mom,
Bella child.
John had dated before.
Again, when the fact that the Commonwealth finds this important yet again for this trial to mention the Bella child, it just goes to show you, right? It's like sad. It's sad and pathetic that this random Bella child, and I don't even think we ever learned the mom's name, but it's like simply they just use they're trying. It's like this. Okay. Lolly, wanted to kind of suggest that because the reference to finding the place and the house was there where the Bella child's mom lived or whatever, and that was part of what set Karen off or whatever. It's like, And they're still going with this. The Bella child here in opening statements. It just goes to, it just says a lot about the case, doesn't it? I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
And so as they make their way through Fairview, you will see there's a road that comes down like a loop and that leads to Fairview. You take a wrong turn on the loop.
Thank you,
and there's a
James.
3-point turn in the driveway. You see the exact precise driveway they turn into because some type of acceleration movement triggered that black box in the Lexus. And that's important. That's 7 minutes before the collision. And you'll see from the Waze exactly where the car was. You'll see from the black box the event of the 3-point turn in the driveway and then a return down to Fairview. Before they get there, at 12:23, a truck is coming the other way. And the witnesses in that truck will say they went to lights, one of them saw a man and woman in the car, John and the defendant, and then they followed the Lexus because they were going to the same house. The truck stopped at the driveway and the Lexus, the defendant's car, will hear of the Waze.
So
Second to second, never stops. It rolls very slowly all the way to the end of the yard in the corner where there's a tree line and flagpole. And they reach that location at 12:34:33. And they're in the car and they stay there. The truck waits, it's somebody in the house will come out, the person goes back in the house and they're both.
the fact that he's relying so much on the Waze data to talk about what the vehicle's doing says a lot too, as well as far as the telemetry goes, right? And also, I was going to say, it sounds like we're going to be hearing from Brother Nagel and Sister Nagel again. So yeah,
5 minutes. We're now down to 2 minutes.
he does.
The truck leaves, and now it's just the defendant and John. And while they're waiting outside, 12:27, John gets a text from Devin Cave, park behind us in the driveway. 12:29, he texts again, are you coming in? You'll hear that Devin Cave and others look out the window and see the defendant's Lexus in front of the flagpole at the far end. It's snowy, it's dark, it's windy, they're waiting. You will know that John O'Keefe was in that car, that Lexus, and didn't move because his healthcare data is not moving. It's not moving until 12:31:56. At 12:31:56, he begins to move. He will have 20 seconds before he falls. 20 seconds. He gets out of the car, the Lexus, and in that 20 seconds, you'll hear that user initiated. He looks at the phone, at the text message he indicates. It's now 12:32:09. He closes the phone the last time. It will be the last time he uses that phone. From the waterfall bar, you see that.
We love Dr. Bob.
And at that time, 12:32:09, last user, he has 7 more seconds to move before he lies dormant the rest of the night. We'll also have the information from the defendant's Lexus black box. The box run differently. There's a 30-second variance, but it's right in the heart of that time. And you will see through the data.
30-second
that
variance.
time, when he makes his last movements with the phone, is when her car leaves 34 feet at least, stops, and then shoots into reverse with the tire spinning right towards him. Right when he got out. You'll know they're arguing because the next morning she called the firefighter, I'm sad because our last moments were fighting.
Well, that surely doesn't, dude. I mean, what? Okay. It just things you don't say if you kill someone on purpose, right? That's like regret, right? When you lose someone you love and it's like, oh, wow. Like we hear this all the time in these different cases where somebody dies, you know, I'm sure it's in movies and stuff too, right? But like somebody dies and it's like, oh man, like the last time I saw them, like we got in a fight and it's like regret, right? It's like the opposite of getting in an argument and being mad and then killing someone. Anyway.
She drives away. They said she's made later statements that when she left, he didn't look mortally wounded. He lied on the ground on top of his phone, white dusting the snow now picking up. And he's just there. It's 12:37. Now, when he's in the car, before he gets to Fairview, the battery temperature of that phone is 77 degrees.
Here's the weird part of the battery temperature.
77 degrees in the warm car. Now,
Thank you, Dr. Bob.
After 5 minutes, drops to 70 degrees. She drives to his house. She makes a phone call at 12:33 after she's left Fairview. She calls again at 12:36:33 and leaves a message. You'll hear, and you will hear the anger and rage in her voice. She leaves a message. John, I fucking hate you.
The other thing is this. If you thought you killed somebody, why would you be calling them and saying this, right? It's clearly something you do when you think somebody's still alive, and like literally exactly what we hear about. We heard about in the first trial, right? That, you know, because she wanted to get out of there and like she you know, da da da, like they had an argument, right, or whatever, and like they've been having these different issues, and like, you know, she wanted to go home, and she doesn't know why he didn't, you know, come back out or whatever. And so it's like, anyway, you know, you don't murder somebody, right, and then like call and do all this, right, a bunch of times. And the reason the other thing, calling a bunch of times to try to get them on the phone. Now, usually what you see if somebody kills somebody on purpose, right, and they are trying to like cover it up, what we always see, right, is them being like super like, oh, hey, sweetie, right, the opposite, right, like overly loving or whatever the case may be. But you don't have them leaving voicemails that are clearly continuing a previous conversation with expecting a response, right? And anyway, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. These voicemails are, to me, show very clearly that she didn't think he was dead, and she thought that she was just mad, right? So anyway, yeah, Angel says it would definitely be interesting to know what she called her parents about. Yeah, totally would. So Twiz asked a question. When did Dr. Bob show up? Can you elaborate? I don't know. Do you mean tonight, or do you mean the first time? Also, side note, apparently Dr. Bob and Victorine knew each other from like years ago, which is incredible. Like, wow. So they like reunited earlier in the chat, and that was like just like, wow, like what are the odds, right? And she was like, are you the same Dr. Bob from years ago? And they recognized each other. It was like, wow.
And she leaves that message, she lies on the side of the road. He gets another text message, it's on the where are you? 12:45. Battery temperature, 61 degrees. So he gets almost 40 calls from the defendant that night. His phone rings, but it never rings. You'll hear from an expert that the light never initiates, the healthcare data never holds. He's gone along with his only companion, his phone. At 12:50.
So this is where it's like he's personifying the phone. Did anyone else think this is weird? I mentioned this earlier. This is just so odd to me. It's like the light's going on the phone, like the phone is dying, the phone is cold, it's got hypothermia.
You'll hear from an expert that the light never initiates, the healthcare data never holds. He's gone along with his only companion, his phone. At 12:53, cell phone drops almost 60 degrees. 12:59, the defendant leaves another message on John's phone. Now, she hasn't spoken to anybody. Nobody has spoken to her, but her message is out. You'll learn the message says, John, nobody knows where you are. And this is where the plot in the cover-up begins. The evidence will make clear that
Cover-up?
she was there. She did not call 911. She did not go back to him. She did not leave.
Right, because she didn't think he was hurt. I just don't understand what he, like, I feel like a lot of what he's saying is proving the defense, right? I just don't know. He even says the word cover up. What else is it?
Nobody has spoken to her, but her message is out. You'll learn the message says, John, nobody knows where you are. And this is where the plot in the cover-up begins. The evidence will make clear that she knew who was there. She did not call 911. She did not go back to him. She did not leave an anonymous note.
She said she doesn't know where he is. And what? Nobody knows where you are. I guess he's trying to say that's her trying to cover it up. Like he says cover. I just don't. None of it makes any sense to me, man.
The night wears on. It's now 1:07. Battery temperature 55 degrees. 1:14, she calls her mother. No answer. 1:14:53. Battery temperature 50 degrees.
So all I can figure is, like, again, he's maybe trying to say this about the phone battery temperature to show the rate at which maybe John's temperature was decreasing. Although this is why it gets weird, because like, well, phones and people are different things. Phones are not people. People are not phones. So like the rate at which the phone battery is getting colder is not going to be the same as a person. So this is why it's like, if that's what he's intending, this is all just very odd to me.
That healthcare data on her phone as well. You'll hear that it stops around that time. You'll later learn that she admits to falling asleep with passing out. But then she wakes. 5 o'clock, she is frantic. She wakes up John's niece, and she is unintelligible. She is yelling, she's screaming, she asks for the niece to call Jen McCabe. She calls Jen McCabe, and you'll hear Jen McCabe recount out of deep sleep. She wakes up and she hears, Jen, 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 screaming Jen's name.
He needs to practice his banshee.
Hang up the phone. Jen McCabe calls down. And then she says, what's going on? And she goes, well, I left him at the waterfall. At the beginning of the cover. She tells Jen McCabe, I left him at the waterfall. Jen calls back and says, you saw him go front. You did leave the waterfall. She hangs up. She then minutes later calls another person, Terry Roberts, a friend of John O'Keefe. Someone who's not friends with the defendant, but they know because they helped raise the kids and they interacted. She had nothing to do with the night before. Wasn't at the bars. Was home with her family. She calls her and says, I think John had to buy a plot. I think he's dead. Now, Terry, with that information, calls 911. She calls hospitals. You can hear her voice. She's concerned. Okay. And then she has another call from the defendant. And she tells the defendant, come to my house. I will help you look for him. And the defendant says, I was so drunk last night, I don't remember anything. Waiting
And there you go.
for her to arrive. She learns she doesn't arrive. Instead, the defendant goes to Jen McCabe's house. Terry Roberts, the other friend, then goes to Jen McCabe's house, pulls behind the car. When she does, she's on Bluetooth, and she can hear the defendant say, my taillight's broken, my taillight's broken. And she looks.
The thing is, right? If you're somebody where you were blackout drunk and you don't remember anything, you're gonna rely. I'm not even talking about in the event of a crime or murder. I'm just saying, like, if somebody's like, if you're trying to piece together what happened during a night where you're blackout drunk, what are you going to do? You're going to rely on what other people tell you they remember happened, right? Right? Because what else are you going to do? If you're trying to like figure out like, oh, how did that ice cream get there? I don't know. I'm just making up an example, right? It's like you ask your friend who was there and hopefully they weren't as drunk as you, whatever. And so, again, I think this is really relevant as it pertains to Karen trying to figure out what happened and the different things she was being told, but it's also relevant in other cases too, right? So
The snow pack with the right taillight, she sees a piece of the taillight missing. The defendant desperately wants to go to 34th Fairview Road, but Terry Roberts takes over and says, we're going to go back to John's house. Maybe he's in the house and we didn't see him. So both cars, driven by Terry Roberts and then Jen McCabe, with the defendant, go back to John O'Keefe's house. You'll see a ring video. We see them go into the house and they look around and you'll hear about the woman, Jen and Terry, enlisted into this task. Look for John O'Keefe. They cannot find him. And then when Terry Roberts comes into a room, she sees, rather than looking, the defendant simply standing there, staring at the wall. At that point, the defendant insists they got to go back to Fairview Road. They decide to take one car. Terry Roberts is taking charge. She's going to drive. They leave the three Lexus and John O'Keefe's driveway, and they drive back towards 34th Fairview Road. You'll hear it is blizzard-like conditions. It is dark. They can barely see a thing. And when they get close to the edge of 34th Fairview, you hear the defendant start to scream, there he is. Both women look and they can't see anything. She starts kicking the door. The defendant's kicking the door. Let me out. Terry Roberts starts the car and lets her out, and she sees the defendant running exactly to where John O'Keefe is in the darkness. Just where she left him. Terry gets out of the car, starts to walk towards where the defendant is, and she sees the defendant lying on a body. She can't tell who it is because the face is still covered with snow. And she comes over and looks, and she wipes off the snow from John O'Keefe's face. She realizes it's one of her best friends in the world is John O'Keefe. And she starts trying to do first aid. They start to move him, and coincidentally at 6:06, when they start to move him, the cold air hits that cell phone battery. It drops from 50 to 43 degrees.
you're
And they
sorry.
die. Then McCabe calls 911.
Here's the other thing I just want to bring up real quick. That one thing that I don't know how the Commonwealth is going to handle it this time, right? The testimony with all the people at the house. Because the thing is this, the Commonwealth's theory means that there's no way that they didn't walk by that body, right? Leaving, coming or going, whatever. There's no way that they wouldn't have walked by that body. Like, in other words, timing wise, he had to already be there in the yard, right? Given their theory. So, and we know the whole thing about Sister Nagel where she added the black blob thing or whatever it was in. I think that happened because they knew that it strains credulity that no one would have seen anything, right? So it's like that got added in, but it's like, the whole thing is a mess. It's like, it doesn't make sense that nobody would have seen anything and they wouldn't have known it was a person. That does not make sense, obviously. And so the alternative is, and we all know there wasn't enough snow yet to have completely obscured the body, but anyway, but also it's like, well, so the options are their timeline doesn't work because he wasn't there already, or they all saw a human body in the yard laying there and they all just ignored it and didn't do anything. Right. So there's that. I just wanted to reiterate as I'm just thinking about this, problems from last time.
Firefighter Nuttall and his crew. And when they lift him, their cell phone battery is shut down to 37 degrees. Kerry Roberts picks it up and puts it in her pocket, and it immediately starts to warm as she moves to help get data, showing movement starts again. At that point,
Yeah, exactly. I don't think they were there. Angel.
These cars and cruisers, they're not sure.
There yet.
The area where John's body is, they find glass from the bar. There's body. They find blood spots. They find the blood spots in plastic containers. They don't know what they're looking for at this point. There's no information. They don't believe or know that there's a crime. They just know that John O'Keefe somehow ended up here with the broken glass and the blood. And so that morning, you can see the workers at the police department try to uncover a little bit around his body to see what they can find, which is very little. And then,
If you guys were in his position, would you try to get out ahead of the red solo cups by bringing him up in opening statements? I'm just curious. I mean, it's not a bad idea. It might be a good idea. That's why I'm asking. I really don't know. I kind of was wondering if he was going to get to that because there's a point where it sounded like he was going to, and then he didn't. By the way, for those of you guys who are members, we do have the brand new red solo cup emoji. But I'm curious, what would you guys think?
Terry Roberts goes and picks up O'Keefe, goes to the news, and they go to the hospital. They go to the Good Samaritan Hospital, and Terry Roberts is
You're very welcome, James.
O'Keefe going to go see her son, her husband. And as she walks down the hall, Karen Reed is also in the hospital. See, there was some reports of maybe she was upset or suicidal, so they sectioned her. They put her in for evaluation to make sure she was safe. You'll hear Peggy O'Keefe tell her she walked down the hall, goes to her son. The defendant is screaming, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" As she walked by Karen Reed, she stopped and she said, "Karen, what happened?" And you hear that Karen was excited and yelling, "Is he dead?" She stops her excitement. Let's go. Doesn't say a word.
Don't you guys love that owl emoji?
Next to her son. And then she has to go back home. She has to go.
Wally's face.
Now, while she's out, the Camp Police Department sent an officer to the house to make sure the children are safe because they're alone if they're home. And when the officer pulls in, he doesn't notice anything, but you see on the dashcam, because the dashcam video notices something. That tail light has a big missing piece to it.
And again, this is the first time the jury's hearing this about the taillight having a missing piece. Again, the thing about clipped. Again, when you picture the way he described it, even though there's so many reasons why this is impossible in terms of the speed and the distance and the slamming off the pedal and in reverse and all, the way he describes it, there's so many problems with that. But even if you give him the benefit of the doubt, you say, let's just imagine somebody did that because they were mad, they got in a fight, they slammed on them. Let's imagine they're a stunt driver and they can go that fast in reverse, blah, 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 and they're trying to hit somebody. Would you just that like? And given the Commonwealth's theory, that person does end up dead, right? Clipped them, it just doesn't make any sense. It can't. I just don't. And I was going to say something else about that too. Yeah, the taillight, right? Like the taillight being cracked does that to me. When I think of somebody clipping something, that to me does seem like damage that makes sense with clipping. But the rest of it doesn't make sense. The cause of death, right? And the Commonwealth's theory from a car, like dying from being hit by, like that doesn't add up, obviously. But also the story of the being mad and then accelerating and going super, like none of it. You can't have it both ways, right, man? The paper. What are you referencing there, DSN? I don't remember that. Is that something that Karen says?
They can't find the children. Ultimately, Peggy comes home. My friend can take it down, and they bring the nephew home, and he is distraught. And then Peggy hears a knock on the door. It is the defendant and her father. They want to come in. They come in. No condolences to Peggy. And they ask him to go upstairs to John's room. And she's busy consoling her grandson. They go upstairs. They're upstairs for about 15 minutes.
Oh, I've never seen Goodfellas. Huh.
Now they got there from the defendant's father, drove his wife and the father to that house. But When they leave, they take 2 cars. They take the Lexus, the broken tail light with them.
I will just say, if ever there's a bird that is actually bad luck, my thoughts on that is that it would be this bird, the lolly bird. Just saying.
And you learn that when police start getting some of the information, they learn about the broken tail light, they learn information that she had told people that she had hit him. They went down to see her. And on their way down, they decided they would get a warrant to take the Lexus. When they get down to Dayton, where the car is, you'll hear from Trooper Lieutenant. They went in and spoke briefly to the defendant. They took the car, they brought it back to Canton. And so, what to learn from the forensic evidence that will help with the science and data is that not only was the cell phone left behind, but also around that area, broken tail light was littered around John Owen's body. Littered around that area. When they got to the hospital, they noticed there was a shoe missing. As time went by, snow melted, they got to the excavation, they found the shoe on a little berm on the border between the street and the grass. We learned days later when they did the plant excavation, they found this hat frozen in the ground. Ultimately, they would find over the course of 10 days that the snow melted almost all every piece of that broken tail light in that area. This hat, the sneaker, the glass. When the defendant left Mr. O'Keefe behind, she looked for something in Mr. O'Keefe called trace evidence. You learn the back of her Lexus, around the taillight area, is John's DNA and stuck to the side, grasping one last piece of John O'Keefe's hair.
That stupid hair, dude.
Now,
Did you guys?
John
Did
O'Keefe fell
you
back.
all see my hair experiment I did last time? Because that's pretty interesting as it pertains to the hair.
I was thinking his head after he was clipped by the car. And you're going to hear from a very renowned doctor and neural surgeon who's treated thousands and thousands of head injuries. And the wound on the back of the head, where he fell backwards, on the cracked skull, is called a basal fracture. To create an injury called counter-coup. After he was hit by a car and fell backwards.
I mean, when I heard when we heard this the contra coup, I just all I can think about, it sounds like a French type of battle plan. Like I think of coup, like contra coup sounds like something related to a coup. I don't know. It's just really funny.
And that hard rock ground, remember, there's no snow, just a dusting at this point. The back of his brain hits the back of his skull and bounces up. When it bounces up, these marks.
Y'all didn't see it? I can pull it up.
And this neurosurgeon will tell you, treated thousands of patients, that this injury, with reasonable degree of medical certainty, is counter-coup caused by falling backwards in your head.
You know, and part of it,
The medical examiner for the
he's really talking up his experts because the defense can't mention ARCO. You know, he's like, this stuff treat that, and a dude like, what a douchebag.
Yeah, they generally said one force trauma, they had it undetermined.
One force trauma.
The renowned neurosurgeon does that. You're also going to hear from an active reconstruction, his name is Doug Welch. Does not work for the state police, local police.
Yeah, and they can't, the defense can't talk about their experts for this.
He'll come in and explain to you exactly what I talked about, how the data from that black box coincides with the cell phone and the movements of the car, the moments before, during, and after the defendant struck Ronald Keith with her car. Now, just a few more things I want to share with you.
What do you mean go on camera? It's a video I made from the camera.
The first one, second degree murder. When most people hear murder, they instantly think shooting somebody, stabbing somebody, praying, deliberate premeditation. Or I will start doing a lot. I'm not going to trample in that area, but I can tell you clearly, we are not going to try to prove that Karen Reed tried to kill John O'Keefe. We're not going to try to prove to you that she intended or wanted him dead. That's not second degree murder. What we'll prove to you is she engaged in an intentional act, driving back at him at that speed in the storm, in the darkness, knowing that he had just gotten out of her Lexus. She intended that act will cause a plain, strong likelihood of death. That's what will prove to you second degree murder. Also, operating under the influence of alcohol, manslaughter will prove to you that she drove her Lexus recklessly. She hit John O'Keefe, and because she hit him and he fell back, she caused his death. The third charge is being seen after knowingly causing death. Again, she hit Mr. O'Keefe with a car. She knew he was injured. She left him behind. And yeah, that's what we'll prove. This case will come down to the science and the data.
Science and the data.
The cell phone is the best of stories. It doesn't suffer from intoxication. It doesn't suffer from memory loss. It doesn't suffer from emotion, pride, or prejudice. It is facts. It is data. And that facts and data.
So he says this numerous times in this opening. He says the science, the facts, and the data. I even wrote it down earlier today because, you know, Does he really want to go that route? I don't know, man. So did you guys want me to show the video? Well, let me finish up with him and then we can watch it if we want to. With the hair experiment there. Yeah.
To the truth in this case. But after Ms. Reed was charged, she began with the learn as a campaign.
Oh, I hated this
Making
part.
public statements.
This makes no sense.
2020, Dateline, Fox 25, a documentary. And we've had an opportunity to get many of her statements and footage, and we're going to show much of it. And her statements to you will confirm what you already know from the science and the data, what you will already conclude from the facts independent about what she did that night. Her word is simply confirmed that her judgment is sound. And you're going to hear from her own lips and many of her statements, her admissions to extraordinary intoxications, her admissions to driving the arrests, her admissions to being angry at John that night. And as I say, her admissions that she told. But to play for you, clip one. You're going to hear the first of the statements that she made after.
Okay. There's the Dateline clip.
I mean, I didn't think I hit him, but could I have clipped him? Could I have tagged him in the knee and incapacitated him? He didn't look mortally wounded as far as I could see, but could I have done something that knocked him out and in his drunkenness and in the cold, they didn't come to again?
And this would have been the moment you dropped him off in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Good night, Dr. Gold. By the way, real quick before you go, I was going to ask you guys this. Do y'all prefer if we cover stuff live as it's happening, like, and for this trial, right? Like for tomorrow, like, as it's happening, or would you prefer covering it in the evenings? Just because I know there's a lot of people streaming it. So just let me know if you have any thoughts.
Ladies and gentlemen, I simply ask you to follow the evidence, follow the science, follow the data. Ignore speculation, surmise, conjecture. Stay true to the evidence. It will lead you to the truth.
What are you researching?
Then on January 29th, 2022, a very intoxicated defendant was angry and arguing about the relationship with John O'Keefe. And after the fight was over, she left, but she brought the fight back to him in the form of her SUV. She clipped him, he fell backwards, he broke his head. And then this man who helped, a lifetime of help, was left at the corner of that yard, left to die with no help. The facts, the data, and the evidence will bring you the truth, and the defendant's own words will confirm everything you've already concluded.
Okay, so a couple things. What are you researching, Twiz? Hi, Happy Annie, welcome back. Okay, so here are my takeaways from his opening statement. So as I'm assessing this, right, what I'm about to just explain is, you know, how I, you know, I know we can't obviously delete everything we know, but in other words, how I, you know, you guys always hear me talk about, like, if I was a juror, like, how would I be perceiving this? So what I'm about to say are the things that I would be saying without knowing anything about the case, and without, they're not facts of the case. They're his presentation, as it were, right? So it's, hopefully that makes sense. So the first thing is, the impression I would be left with is, again, this Tim Nuttall is really important. He's the hero in this case. You know, he's really important. He's really reliable. He's a huge key figure, and he's like the hero in this case. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is that there's something really important about the phone battery getting cold. He spent a lot of time talking about that. The phone battery getting cold, and at what time it got to what percentage and how cold it was, and what, like, that's another thing that that left a huge impression on me as far as how he chose to present this, right? Opening statement. Another thing, number 3, is the thing that I'd be left with a huge question mark with if I was a juror, and also I have as a person, me now, is the thing about being clipped. That to me is like, again, seems to not bother anyone else, bothers me. Thing number 4 is, again, the things about the argument, but then she clipped him, even though she was like speeding in reverse, which sounds intentional, right? You know, the Commonwealth is going for that first charge where they have to prove the intent, right? And so it's like, if you intend to run somebody over, right? none of it adds up. Like it wouldn't result in clipping them. It wouldn't even setting aside that the injuries obviously don't match getting hit with a car. None of it makes sense, right? Anyway, okay, so then that whole thing, and then like in other words, what am I saying? I would have a lot of questions about what happened when the Commonwealth alleges he was hit by a car in terms of that whole thing. Okay, then also it would be bothering me as a juror, and it is bothering me as I am now. The whole thing about she went on a campaign, which just sounds negative, like a smear campaign is what he meant that as, right? But then he talks about the quote unquote campaign and says she makes all these admissions. So it's like, okay, so then she was like on your side, like she's saying the things that you're alleging, that she was drunk and she hit him. Like it doesn't make any sense. So she's like, what? It's a campaign to admit that she did this. That makes no sense. So those are my main takeaways on that. All right. So now, before we go into the defense opening, we'll watch my little, it's not long, it's like 5 minutes long, my video from last summer of the hair experiment that I did, where I tried to, as best as possible, duplicate the situation and see what would happen, for the hair. Is it possible that it would stay? Because remember, we know that the hair was on there and then it was driven through a blizzard and it was like a great distance. And I don't remember all the details. I'm not worried about it because they will all be presented again. But like, on the highway and it was blizzarding and all this and that, right? And like the hair stayed on the vehicle, right? Okay. We still don't know what Twiz is researching. Squirrel Holmes.
All right, so we are going to do a little experiment. Now, while this is not official in any way, shape, or form, I have all the confidence in the world that it's going to be, in many ways, more reliable than anything done in the investigation with the Karen Reed trial. So, what I have here is a car. So, it is quite a windy day today, which might play into some things because we're going to be remembering that it was a blizzard during the time. So, here's my taillight. So, first of all, the height. Now, obviously, this is a Prius and not an SUV. However, the taillights are going to be probably in a similar area. The point being, not nearly at the height of somebody's head when they're over 6 feet tall. This taillight here comes to like my hip area. So then let's just take a look here because, it looks like a solid piece of machinery, whatever the fuck. But if I knock it, you can tell it's very hollow, right? And like all of this stuff here, like it looks like it's like thick layers of glass or whatever. It's an illusion basically because it's just plastic, right? And it's like they have that lining in there, which we saw it with Karen's vehicle. We'd see the inside was all silvery.
There it is, right there. So there's not that much material in it, which is important.
It's that lining to give it, it's like a mirror effect where it's reflective. So that light, even without it being on, light reflects, right? So, so while it looks like there's a lot of shit in there, it's not, it's just hollow. And so, yeah, so that's what we got. Now, also what we got is a hair. And the testimony was that they measured the hair at 7/8 of an inch. So I pulled a hair from my head so I could have the root tip on it because they talk about that. I don't know if that's going to make a difference in terms of how it attaches to the vehicle, but I measured it I cut it because I have really long hair. I cut it short to 7/8 of an inch. So it's just the very tip of my hair. So if you imagine a short piece of hair from somebody's head, right? Like it's like that, but it's the same length as what they have in evidence as far as the hair on the vehicle. It's hot, whatever. I can't duplicate the temperature, but we do know that there would have been some sort of moisture on her car because of the fact that there had been some snow. So in order to duplicate that, I've got just a spray bottle here with some water. It was a vertical panel where the hair was. And I would say that, while for hers, it was under the tail light on the bumper. My bumper is curved. So I'm actually going to go right next to it because this is more of a vertical surface here. So I'm just going to spray. Sorry, it's dirty. It's pollen. So I'm going to spray a little bit of water.
Colony now.
Good amount of water just to be sure. It's wet. Okay. Now I've got my little hair. Little focus. There we go. That's the root tip, I think, there. So I'm just going to take it, and it's actually curved, which is good because it's kind of curved, the one that they had. And I'm just going to place it.
What's funny, look at this.
That's pretty good in terms of duplicating. Now, I'm not going to press it on. Actually, this is interesting. So I put it there, and now you can actually see how parts of it, I don't know if you, it's pretty good at duplicating it though, isn't it? So it's kind of a backwards C shape.
It looks just like the one on the
It's on there.
Crazy.
I would imagine that because it's more humid in the summertime, I would imagine that moisture would last longer than when it was dry. But anyway, so there's the hair. And we took a look at the taillight already. But what I'm going to do now is that hair's there. I'm going to drive over to the grocery store, the Harris Teeter, which is literally right across the street from me, right that direction. And it's a very short drive. I'm going to drive to the grocery store and come home, and then we're going to see if that hair is still there.
The idea being, right, because this is just a short drive across the street, and the whole thing of being like this hair somehow stayed on that vehicle in the blizzard with all the long drive and all that, right? So, okay. The high wind and the...
Well, I just got back from the Harris Teeter. 2-second drive across the street. There's a slight breeze. It was a little bit windier earlier, but it's been on and off. Anyway, take note of what is no longer here. The hair is gone. So, yeah. Also, I just wanted to say real quick, my car has damage to it that I did not do, and I have no idea how it got there.
Scratches.
Including, this is pretty significant right here. That like chipped the paint, like kind of dented it. And then there's like minor scrapes and shit. But all of this I did not do. So I would imagine this is when my car was parked in a parking lot somewhere and somebody hit it with something. Just saying.
The reason I brought that up is because when I filmed this during the trial, it was when they were pointing out her car. They were looking at the scratches, and then one of the things that they made much ado about, they being the Commonwealth, was like the somewhat, scratches that were close in proximity to the taillight, right? Like they were just like, they were like akin to what I just showed. Actually, the shit I showed you guys was actually worse. Like this teensy little surface scratches that you could buff out. It was like that. And like they like tried to make a big deal about those scratches being involved, right? And so that's why I was specifically addressing that, because literally when that happened in trial, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, those scratch, that is so dumb. That could have happened from anything, anywhere. And like literally, like that's why I pointed that out, because it's like, if you just have a vehicle, you're going to have stuff, you're going to have scratches like that on your car that you don't know where they came from. It's probably from something, and even just like a branch on a tree can do that. Anyway, so that's why I pointed that out. So there you go. That's the great hair experiment. So now we are into the defense opening. Now I died right when I was like, all right, here comes Mr. Lussey, because everything that we knew was Mr. Lussey was doing opening. That's what they said just last week. Mr. Lussey was going to be doing the opening, right? I mean, did anyone else? I mean, what was everyone else's? I haven't seen anyone else's commentary on this. I'm just like, is it just me? Did everyone else freak out? Did everyone else like lose their minds? Not that there's anything wrong with Alan Jackson doing it, but like literally, Alessi stood up and said, at the hearing and was like, yeah, I'm doing the opening statements and I won't mention the third party and da-da. So I was very surprised when this happened.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jackson.
But I have just a moment to readjust.
Sure, the court officers will be fine.
What? Huh? It's interesting. I wonder why they made that last minute change. Like why, like they changed their mind on having Mr. Lussey do it for some reason. Really interesting to me.
Mayor, the evidence in this case will establish above everything else 3 points.
I mean, I'm trying to see. I'm like, I can play answer my own question. I wonder if, because initially they were going to have Alessi do the opening and Alan Jackson do the closing, and then they decided to switch. They wanted Alessi to do the closing. But also the 3 points. Okay, let's think about this.
Everything else, 3 points. There was no collision with John.
So that's point number 1. There was no collision, okay?
There was no collision. There was no collision.
So his 3 points is just the one thing? Is that what that's my takeaway from that, right? Yeah, the beards, I don't know. It looks like he's trying to be from the Civil War. And, you know, speaking of which, we had some crazy timing earlier with the verdict watch for Lori Vallow when we were playing around with stuff, waiting. And then literally I played this clip that I'm about to play as she walked in. It was pretty epic. But right here, like, this is what this is the vibe he's going for. That's what I picture. I picture Civil War type stuff. So I don't know. But so his 3 points, it sounds like there was no collision 3 times.
John O'Keefe did not die from being hit by a vehicle, period. The facts will show that. The evidence will show that. The data will show that. The science.
The tech dude, which by the way is a different tech dude from last time, he nodded a lot. Watch.
The facts will show that. The evidence will show that.
He nods there.
The data will show that. The science will show that. And the experts will tell you that. You'll learn that the Commonwealth has pinned its entire case on a brazen and a flawed assertion that is untethered, unconnected
the French
to
horns,
the facts and to the evidence. And their assertion.
I mean, I expect charge. You guys know what I mean, right? When it finishes that thing and it's like charge, right? Anyway.
Contrary to science.
Did he ride a horse to this thing?
Because at the end of the day, folks, there was no collision with John O'Keefe. So how did we end up here? How does Karen Reed
The beard. Why does it stop where it stops? Anyway.
end up sitting in that chair on trial for an event that literally never happened? Well, the evidence is going to explain it. And it can be summed up in the following text message at the very beginning of this investigation. A text message of a now fired Massachusetts state police officer named Michael Proctor.
I loved what he did with Proctor during his opening statement.
He was the lead investigator on this case. And he was talking about a fellow officer, a fellow cop who owned the property where John O'Keefe's body was found.
So I want to just talk a quick bit about the difference, the contrast, right? So remember, I have as I'm thinking as a juror, I have these impressions from the state's opening, and there was no break in between, which is important because if there's a break, you can change you can change it. There was no break. So again, I already told you guys my key takeaways that I would have like as a juror, basically, right? And but remember the vibe, how they started out with the vibe, right? How it was quiet, right, and the whole setting scene, and then the sharp contrast here. Now remember, for the Commonwealth, their hero, right, or what it was, Mr. Nuttall. That was the first thing that he talked about at length was Mr. Nuttall. Now here, in contrast, there's no Mr. Nuttall, but instead we have Michael Proctor,
Officer,
the villain,
cop,
really, the villain.
Property where John O'Keefe's body was found. Text message with a buddy. Question: is the homeowner going to catch any shit?
You're the villain, yeah.
Answer: nope. He's a Boston cop too. That quote defines the lack of integrity of the Commonwealth's entire case, its entire investigation, and this prosecution. During the course of this trial, you'll learn much more about Mr. Proctor, why he said that, and what it really means.
Now, if I'm a juror, I'm already like, well, hang on. Why didn't the Commonwealth say something about this, right? Like they could have, and we all know they could have tried to get out ahead. They could have tried to get out ahead. What the fuck, right? Because literally it's like, hang on, here's what we were left with from the Commonwealth, right? Mr. Nuttall's a hero and all the stuff we just talked about, right? And it's like, okay, the arguing and the Bella child and whatever. And it's like, well, hang on, they left all this out? Like, that's what I would be thinking.
What you'll see and hear in this courtroom in the coming weeks is not just a story of a tragic loss. And make no mistake, John O'Keefe's death is and was a tragic and tragic loss. But the story you'll hear is about an investigation that was riddled with errors from the beginning, a rush to judgment, conflicted and corrupted from the start, corrupted by bias, corrupted by incompetence, and corrupted by deceit. Finally, it was corrupted by a deliberate effort to avoid and to cover up the very truth that you are seeking. You'll find when you hear the evidence that the Commonwealth's case is the literal definition of reasonable doubt. They won't be able to talk their way out of it. They won't be able to explain their way out of it. They won't be able to excuse their way out of it. And they can't meet their extreme burden of proof, which the court will tell you is beyond any and all reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty.
What I like that he's doing here is really hammering home the burden of proof and the Commonwealth's burden and reasonable doubt, because he's and he's so confident. Hold on.
Effort to avoid and to cover up the very truth that you are seeking. You'll find when you hear the evidence that the Commonwealth's case is the literal definition of reasonable doubt.
It's the literal definition of reasonable doubt. I think that's brilliant.
They won't be able to talk their way out of it. They won't be able to explain their way out of it. They won't be able to excuse their way out of it.
Right there. Now, those are 3 promises, but here's the thing. I don't think these are empty promises. We all know it's terrible to make promises in opening and then not deliver. I think that this will, in my opinion, the evidence will deliver on this, without question.
Cover up the very truth that you are seeking. You'll find when you hear the evidence that the Commonwealth's case is the literal definition of reasonable doubt. They won't be able to talk their way out of it. They won't be able to explain their way out of it. They won't be able to excuse their way out of it.
I just love that so much. That's so powerful to me.
And they can't meet their extreme burden of proof.
Right.
Which the court will tell you is beyond any and all reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty.
Great. I love that he's getting into that right from the
Members of
get-go.
the jury, Karen Reed found John O'Keefe dead on the front lawn of a Boston police officer, Brian Albert, at 6 a.m. on January 29th, 2022. Picture the scene. Blood-curdling screams, ambulances, emergency lights on, fire engines.
So this struck me immediately. I mentioned this earlier. The contrast in how he's setting the scene, right? Versus what Breenan did. Breenan painted this, there was an air of calm and all that. You guys remember? It was like da-da-da, and it's like, it sounds like I think this is very fascinating. I love it. It sounds like they're describing 2 completely different cases. This is my impression the entire time I listened to this. In other words, if I'm a juror and I don't know anything about this case and I don't know I would be like, are they describing the same case? That's literally what this sounds like to me. The complete opposite. It's really fascinating, isn't it?
On January 29th, 2022. Picture the scene. Blood-curdling screams, ambulances, emergency lights on, fire engines, ladder trucks, paramedics, patrol vehicles, patrol cruisers, police officers, first responders, firefighters, all swarming all over Brian Albert's lawn, literally feet under his bedroom window. Yet Brian Albert, a sworn peace officer, a first responder himself, never came outside. Never went outside to see what the chaos was about, never went outside to see if he could assist a man in need, never walked outside his house to see if he could help a fallen fellow officer on his own front lawn.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Breenan even one time ever mentioned the Alberts, by name. I don't think he did.
More shockingly, you'll learn that lead investigator for the Massachusetts police, Michael Proctor, never set foot inside Brian Albert's house that day. Never engaged in any investigation inside that house that day, even though a party with much alcohol had just occurred in that house, and even though a Boston police officer.
Twiz is going to the gym. Well, take us with you, Twiz, and we're going to be cheering you along the way. I know you can. I think you're able to still listen and stuff as you're working out, because we're your fan club. We're your cheerleaders here. Not fan club. We're your cheerleaders. Well, how about that? Yeah, I don't know where everybody is. Literally, I don't know. I wonder, how sometimes YouTube has been doing that thing where people are like, what do they call it? Shadow banned, or they're locked out. I wonder if that's going on, because literally that's been happening. And I don't know anything about that, but I wonder if that's what is happening, guys. But we all support Twiz on his workout. Yeah. I know that it happens to people. It's happened to many of you guys. Maybe not y'all that are here, but the ones who aren't here are the ones it seems to happen to. So like Meg's had that issue, and I think officials had that issue, and Heather's had that issue. A lot of people. So yeah. So I don't know, man. I don't know, but I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. It's happened to Twiz before. Okay, there you go. So very weird. But Meg out lurking. Okay. Anywho, but take us with you, Twiz, on your workout so we can know how you're doing.
Officer was found dead or dying just mere feet from the front door on that lawn. He never secured the crime scene, never separated and secured witnesses. He never properly collected evidence. He never secured.
For anyone who missed it, Twiz is starting his own church, Church of the Logic.
Party with much alcohol had just occurred in that house, and even though a Boston police officer was found dead or dying just mere feet from the front door on that lawn, He never secured the crime scene, never separated and secured witnesses. He never properly collected evidence. He never secured the evidence. He never searched for signs of a struggle inside or outside the home. He never properly canvassed the neighborhood. Michael Proctor never did any of these things, even though fellow officers of Michael Proctor's actually mentioned, in their words, not mine, that it looked like John O'Keefe may have been, quote, in a fight. You'll have questions about that conduct. During the course of this trial, you'll find that the Commonwealth will not have answers. You'll see from the evidence in this case that this case carries a malignancy, one that is spread through the investigation. It's spread through the prosecution from the very start, from the jump. A cancer that cannot be cut out, a cancer that cannot be cured. And that cancer has a name. His name is Michael Proctor.
So the way he set this
Now,
up,
you didn't hear his name.
oh, beautiful. The way he set this up, it's like if I'm on this jury, when I hear Michael Proctor, and I'm like trying to remember who the players are in this case, right? You know, if I'm a juror and I'm like, I don't know who anyone is, it's like, oh, who's that dude? When I hear Michael Proctor, automatically now I would be thinking, oh yeah, that guy, the cancer of this case. That's what I would be thinking for this entire trial.
That cannot be cut out, a cancer that cannot be cured.
Who's unhinged?
And
Jackson?
that cancer has a name. His name is Michael Proctor. Now, you didn't hear his name in the prosecution's opening statement.
Yep.
Not once. I suspect that was probably by design. But make no mistake about it. The evidence will show in this case that Michael Proctor is the very definition of the Commonwealth's case. And he's also their Achilles heel. He was the lead investigator on the case officer, the architect of the entire prosecution. You'll learn there's not a single part of this case, folks, not a single part that he didn't touch, that he didn't direct, that he didn't orchestrate personally. Every single bit of it has his fingerprints on it. You'll learn that Michael Proctor was a longtime family friend of the Alberts. And he's been disgraced by his own agency, not by us, by the Massachusetts State Police. Investigated, suspended, and fired. The evidence will show that Massachusetts State Police found Michael Proctor guilty of bringing dishonor to the department for his conduct, not in some other case, not in some tangential case, in this case. The investigation of Karen Reed. Conduct that included bias in favor of his friends, the all-powerful Albert family, and bias against my client, Miss Reed, the outsider. Do you have any idea how hard it is for a state trooper to get fired? The evidence is going to show that Michael Proctor earned it.
Wait, who's in a fight,
Every
Twiz?
bit of it. You'll hear that within hours of a Boston
I
police
loved that as well. Hang on.
state trooper to get fired, the evidence is going to show that Michael Proctor earned it. Every bit of it. You'll hear that within hours of a Boston police officer being found dead on Brian Albert's lawn, Michael Proctor, the lead investigator, who had investigated exactly nothing up to this point, right at the beginning, made an early pronouncement that Brian Albert himself was not going to, quote, catch any shit, end quote. And that was for one reason and one reason only. He's a Boston cop. The evidence will show that Michael Proctor made this statement in a text conversation with his high school buddies, a text he never thought would see the light of day, certainly never thought we would get a hold of. And when he thought no one was looking, he actually said the quiet part out loud. He's a cop too. We'll give him a pass. You'll learn that in Michael Proctor's world, rank has its privileges. The evidence will show that's privileges that you don't get and I don't get. But apparently a Boston police officer, Brian Albert, and his friends, they do get. You'll learn that in Michael Proctor's world, he didn't care about finding the truth.
So here's what I will say, again, just being fair here. I think that he doesn't need to go quite on as much about this. I think that the more, like, here's the thing. When he made that thing about him being a cancer, Michael Proctor being the cancer, it's like the juries, you've got their attention. They're going to associate, in my opinion, like Michael Proctor with cancer. That is such a huge statement to make that, like, it almost weakens it, in my opinion, by then adding in examples, right? If it were me, I would have thought maybe leave it at that and let them make if you leave it at that, the jury will be on the edge of their seat waiting for the point in the trial where they learn what he did, right? But when you give these little examples, it's like, they might already start be deciding whether or not they think it actually does amount to that, but they're not getting all, this is not, obviously this isn't all the evidence, right? So it's sort of like, keep them waiting, keep them wanting, you know, in suspense, like wanting to find out what he did. If, you know, I liked the part about, you know, how hard it is for state trooper to get fired. I keep that. But now these specific examples, I would have saved. Because again, I think it just actually diminishes the impact of his previous statements, which were so powerful, and leave it at that. And then let it show it, let them see it unfold. Yeah. But I mean, again, still, obviously it's brilliant, but I'm just, you know, I'm giving my thoughts and being, you know, objective, in terms of what I think, you know, what I'm thinking. So, yeah.
In his world, his priority was to protect the brotherhood, to protect that blue wall, to protect his friends who were at the Albert's house that night. I want to take a step back, if I could, and spend the next few minutes talking a little bit more detail about what the actual facts in this case will show, not based on speculation, not based on surmise, not based on guesswork or conjecture, but the actual true facts that you will learn through the course of this trial. On January 28th, 2022, it was a Friday night. John and Karen had made plans to meet up with friends for drinks. It was a happy and normal night for them. They were affectionate, they were loving, they were in good spirits, nothing out of the ordinary. They started at a local watering hole called C.F. McCarthy's. You've heard that name before, and you'll hear it again. And eventually they made their way over to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, another bar where they were. When they got to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, the Albert family was already there, already heavily drinking. You'll learn that this was no ordinary family, the Alberts. The Albert family was a well-known Canton family. Some might even describe them as a very powerful Canton family. Brian Albert was there at the Waterfall.
Oh, yeah.
You'll hear that he's a longtime Boston police officer. His wife, Nicole Albert, was there with him. His brother, Chris Albert, a powerful Canton politician. He sits on the select board. The select board actually governs the police department, the Canton PD. He was there. His wife, Julie Albert, was there. Their daughter, Caitlin Albert, was there. His sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, was there. Her husband, Matt McCabe, was also there. They were all there drinking before John and before Karen ever arrived. You'll learn that a man by the name of Brian Higgins, also a law enforcement officer and longtime friend, longtime pal of Brian Albert, he was also there. And the two of them, the two Brians, had been drinking most of the night together. You'll see video footage from the waterfall, which will show you that Karen and John were happy. They were affectionate. They were caring. They were loving. Just business as usual, out on a date on a Friday night. But that exact same video footage which lead investigator Michael Proctor plainly chose to ignore that video footage. It paints a very different picture of Brian Higgins. You'll learn that Higgins had romantic designs for Karen.
Romantic
That becomes
designs.
important. Brian Higgins had engaged Karen in flirtatious texts, but days earlier she had put a stop to it. She had ghosted him in common parlance. In other words, just ignored him. The evidence will show that the first time he saw her and was in her presence after being rejected by her was when she walked into the Waterfall Bar and Grill along with her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. At 11:58 p.m., just minutes before John ultimately arrived at the Albert residence, you'll see a video at the Waterfall of an unsettling interaction, troubling interaction between Brian Higgins and John O'Keefe. And unlike the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, in this case, you won't ignore that evidence. As the bar was closing around 12 midnight, the Alberts invited everybody back to their house for a get-together to just keep the night going. And you'll learn that Karen and John ultimately pulled up to the house. They got out of the SUV to make sure they had the right address. You see, neither John nor Karen had ever been to 34 Fairview. They weren't even sure they were at the right address. And the evidence will establish that John got out of the SUV and went into the house. Let me say that again. The facts unequivocally, the data, the science, the witnesses will all unequivocally establish that John O'Keefe went into the Albert home that night. Eyewitnesses and forensic data will establish that fact.
So remember, the Commonwealth was trying to make it seem like they couldn't. What was it? They were saying, you know, not to mention anybody going in the house, or whatever. But Judge Bev shot that down. I pointed out earlier when we were listening to this, I was like, yeah, he didn't use the name Chloe, and I thought that was to get around that or the Commonwealth, but I'd forgotten because again, everything happened so fast. She had already said they know they can't say it. Anyway, he doesn't use the name Chloe, but again, there's like, I think that's a good idea. Angel, if you didn't already know, like I covered the whole trial with reading all of the sidebars. I imagine you've probably seen that. So that was like like the Be Heard projects were like how I got started doing all this stuff. Anyway, but the sidebars, all of the sidebars with the entire trial of everything that happened before and after the sidebars. Anyway, it was fun. And so that's where we have a lot of jokes from that. And yeah, like Fender and Kid Smith, some of our OG Squirrel friends, that's kind of where they were there for that. And yeah, so shout out to the OG Squirrels and all the new Squirrels as well. But it is fun reminiscing about all that. So yeah, glad you know. And for anyone who likes that Be Heard, that's kind of sidebars are classic because you really get to hear, hear Elaine getting scolded, right? And oh, it's just great.
And the evidence will establish that John got out of the SUV and went into the house.
Okay.
Let me say that again. The facts unequivocally, the data, the science, the witnesses will all unequivocally establish that John O'Keefe went into the Albert home.
The witnesses. That's interesting. Huh. What witnesses do you guys think are going to establish that? Like lay witnesses? I mean, to me, I'm interpreting that as lay witnesses. I mean, technically, he could be mentioned. He could be expert witnesses, but I don't think that's what he means. I think he means lay witnesses. But who?
Let me say that again. The facts unequivocally, the data, the science, the witnesses will all unequivocally establish that John O'Keefe went into the Albert home that night.
Yeah, what witnesses?
Eyewitnesses.
That's one of those things where it's like, is Karen going to take the stand? I don't think so.
And forensic data will establish that.
Okay, eyewitnesses. Who though? Y'all, who? Everybody says they didn't see him come in the house, so I don't know who's he talking about.
That fact. When he didn't come back out, you'll learn that Karen grew increasingly frustrated. She got upset.
We love you, MCAT. I hope Twiz is still listening on his workout. Go Twiz, go. I'm so happy we're so happy to see you again. We were talking about you again today. We were like, oh yeah, MCAT was there for trivia night. Oh, thank you, Need Some Z's. Also welcome. He testified that in the first trial. Hegan said he saw him go in the house. I mean, I'd forgotten that. Huh. That's crazy though, because everybody else said he didn't go in the house. So how did that, I mean, the thing is like with the first trial, it's like there was so much stuff like this where it was like, what? But then it was like, you had to move on to the next thing. And the next thing was like, what? And then it moved on to the next thing. And the next thing was like, what? And then it got to the part where it was like, Trooper Proctor and like, it was like one disaster. And then Trooper Paul, and then you forgot about Trooper Proctor. I forgot about Trooper Proctor when Trooper Paul took the stand. I mean, it's just one disaster after another. It's just, so you couldn't give each disaster the due attention it deserved, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay, thank you. Hagen said he saw Tall Man coming. Okay, right. Now that you say Tall Man, now I remember that. Now I do remember that now that you see Tall Man. Twiz is driving. Did you see MCAT is here? Okay, thank you. Now I remember. Now that you say that, now I remember that. Okay, right. So the quibble there would have been over. Was it him or was it not him? But that does. Oh, grand jury. Right. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense because that y'all know I have a good memory, right? And I'm like, well, it's totally possible that because of all the other stuff, but yeah, now it makes sense because we don't hear the grand jury testimony. And so we didn't hear him say that, but we heard that. Okay, that makes sense. Court in the morning. Are you going to be on a jury? I mean, I'm not trying to pry, but that's so interesting that you're going to be in court for 8 weeks, though. Like, that's pretty cool. And so it turns out Heather, interesting. So Heather was in timeout. Okay, you're not anymore, Heather. That's what we were thinking maybe was going on. Wonderful. Oh, Twiz. Classic Twiz. Oh, you mean the Reed trial? Speaking of which, I've been asking this question. Y'all will weigh in, right? So would you guys prefer that I stream this as it's happening live as much as I possibly can? Or would you prefer recaps at night? Because I know there's a lot of channels that are streaming it. And that's why I'm asking. Because like last time, like the last summer, right? People really were wanting me to be doing it live as much as possible because of the fact that other chats were toxic and stuff. So I just don't know. Like, I'm just asking y'all what you prefer. Cause I'm, obviously I can't just stream the entire trial and then do it twice each day. Like, I mean, it's just not reasonable. So, it might be that like maybe we do some parts earlier and then later, but I don't know. Just do you guys have a preference as far as like trying to stream it as it's happening live versus later going back through it? Let me know. Twiz wants Higgins to plead the fifth. It's funny because remember, Higgins is Twiz's middle name in his command. That's funny. At night is cool. Need some Z's. Heather likes nights better. Okay. I feel like there's probably gonna be some school friends who are gonna be sad if I don't. I don't know. But yeah, y'all just let me know and we'll just sort of see. Okay, gotcha. That's interesting. In what trial was that, Heather? Okay, so wonderful. Okay, we'll keep going
He was
here.
left alone in a car in the cold, in the middle of the night, with the car idling. John had gone into the house. She expected him to come right back out. And when he didn't, seconds turned into minutes, and minutes started to clock away. She left John
That's
a voicemail,
true.
then another voicemail after voicemail after voicemail, text messages. But he was unresponsive. He didn't pick up a single call. He didn't respond to a single text. The longer he didn't respond, the more upset she got. The Commonwealth will intimate, as they already have in their opening statement, that these voicemails are evidence that the two were fighting. The actual evidence in this case, however, will show the exact opposite. You'll hear that Karen was very agitated. You'll hear some voicemails where she's swearing. You'll hear voicemails where she calls them names. There's name calling. But you'll also hear the context of those voicemails. And every single one of those voicemails was left for John after he failed to come back out of the house, after he failed to respond to her voicemails and to her texts. Karen believed John had just left her sitting there, grabbed a beer, was partying with his friends. The evidence will actually show that John and Karen never had a crossword, not a single crossword that entire evening before he left that SUV and went inside the house. And you will learn what Karen had absolutely no way of knowing at the time. It wasn't that he wouldn't respond to her. It's that he couldn't respond to her. And the evidence will show you why. Let's talk about that. We'll introduce you to a doctor named Elizabeth Lopesada, a renowned forensic pathologist, a medical examiner, and a professor at Brown University. She will tell you that the injury to the back of John's head, first of all, was immediately incapacitating. And that has meaning. At the moment he suffered that fatal head injury, he couldn't walk, talk, grab his phone, cry for help, nothing. He was completely incapacitated, completely unconscious from the moment he suffered that injury. He was completely still and incapable of interacting with anyone or anything. But the doctor will tell you something more, and just as important. She'll tell you that John O'Keefe did not suffer from hypothermia, as the Commonwealth will undoubtedly allege. His body showed no signs of it. No frostbite, no cold-induced injuries to his organs, no damage based on cold or frost. Ladies and gentlemen, the scientific evidence and the medical evidence will establish that John O'Keefe had to be injured somewhere else.
And so I wonder if Breenan's whole thing about the phone and the temperature thing, remember, like I kept saying the phone battery, temperature, percent, all that. I wonder if the whole thing with that is because he's hoping, like, in order to try to prove that he has hypothermia, right? Like, okay. Like, remember, I even made a joke earlier about it. I was like, oh, it's like he's trying to say the phone had hypothermia. And I didn't even think about it until just now that maybe that is exactly what he's doing. I was saying that as a joke, right? But maybe that's exactly what he's doing. Why? Because they want to say the phone was under his body, right? And so therefore, if they, for example, can say that the phone was kept warm longer than it would have been because there was a person laying on top of it, I don't know. In other words, in order to establish that, like, okay, for example, if they can't 100% establish that John O'Keefe had hypothermia at a certain time, the best thing they could do is establish he was definitely outside at a certain time and for a certain duration. And then it's like, okay, well then, obviously someone would have, like, and then they could ask an expert, like, if someone was outside in this condition for this long, would they have hypothermia? And they're like, yeah, right. You know what I mean? So using the phone to try to prove the hypothermia, if that makes sense. That because he had to be outside keeping the phone warm or whatever, he was on top of the phone, he was out there long enough. You know, I wonder if that's why that was such a big part. Breenan brought that whole thing up with the phone battery and the coldness with the phone dying of hypothermia like a lot. So
Somewhere warmer. And his body had to have been moved out into the cold.
MCAT, that's awesome. She's not taking shit from anybody.
And that's where ultimately at 6 a.m., Karen found him the next morning. You will learn that John did not have a single injury consistent with being hit by a car. Let me say that again. The evidence will
What are you
establish
talking about, Twiz?
that John did not suffer a single injury on his body consistent with having been
Right.
hit by a car.
Right.
Not one. You'll learn that John.
Yeah, they need to, yeah, exactly. Because the Commonwealth is going to try, they need as many ways as possible to try to prove who's on that lawn. Right. And again, it's problematic that none of the people saw him. I'm just not sure what Twiz is saying about one bitch and then what doesn't make sense to you, Angel. And then needs and sees the temperature thing is bullshit because if John was outside all night from 12:30 to 6 a.m., then the phone should have been 18 degrees Fahrenheit, same temperature as it was up. Yeah, no, I mean, of course it's done. I mean, I 100% agree. And the other thing I said too is I was like, well, humans and phones do not lose temperatures at the same rate. And like, he really was trying to personify that phone. It was really weird to me. So it's like, again, telling, right? If that's when you look at how much time he spent talking about things like the phone battery and then also Tim Nuttall, it's really telling about like what he's going to be relying on, right? I mean, that's my takeaway of it is like, wow, really? And even just using common sense, the phone thing is so problematic. Like, I was so confused. Like when we were watching this live, I backed it up several times because I was like, what? Is he talking? I kept thinking he was talking about John O'Keefe. And then I'm like, no, he's talking about a phone. I'm like, unless he's trying to suggest that a person has a battery or that John was a robot or like the phone is a person. Like, and I was like, nope, he's talking about the phone, but he's talking about like it's a person. It was just very weird. The no signs of hypothermia under his body. Mm-hmm. They'll say he didn't die from the cold. Well, I mean, herein lies part of the Commonwealth's problem, right? Because isn't the cold part of like their whole theory? I mean, I don't know. Like, it's just a mess, right? Isn't that the whole thing? Leaving him to die in the cold? Isn't that their whole thing? So they can't. I mean, that's a good. I agree with you, Twiz. That's a good way to try to combat the Jen problem, right? To say he didn't die from the cold, but that is not. Or are you saying, are you talking about the Commonwealth here? I assume you're talking about the Jen McCabe and the Commonwealth. Like, if you're the Commonwealth, right, and you're trying to say that the Jen McCabe, well, I guess the Commonwealth is saying it wasn't Jen McCabe. It's just, yeah. So you must be talking about the defense then, huh? The thing is this, though. The defense is saying that it was Jen McCabe that made that search, and the Commonwealth is saying that it was Karen that made that search. So basically, both sides, in a way, seem to be conceding that the cold played a factor, right? Even though it doesn't make sense, right? You would have had frostbite. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. Yeah, nothing about the phone makes sense with that, for sure. Yeah. The phone being underneath him is so reminiscent of Murdoch, isn't it? With the Paw phone. It's just so Murdoch. But also, right, blunt force trauma. Right, a blow to the head from the grass, right? I mean, you'd be better off. You'd be better off not trying to act like the grass did it and being like, okay, it was definitely other things too, or more. Dude, okay, we're just gonna take a second.
You also told him that you thought you heard a wildcat, but maybe it was a person or something like that as well?
No, that's not what I said.
What did you say then?
I said when I went outside that there's a house cat that's gone wild, and he hangs around. He goes from hanging around the shop, goes from hanging around the house, different times. You might, and there'll be times you don't see him. And he had been around the house. Mm-hmm. And when I went outside, I believe that cat was over there.
I love it. Twiz is, dude. Okay, here's the thing. Y'all have to understand. Twiz is doing a thing. It's really funny. He's doing this thing where he's like arguing the opposite. When we were covering Lori Vallow, the entire time he was like, it was funny, right? He's like, Lori's innocent. There's no conspiracy. Charles totally smashed Alex with a bat the whole time, right? And then literally as soon as the verdict was coming in and they're about to read the verdict, then he was like, okay, she's guilty. And I was like, oh, I see what he was doing. First, it seemed like he was just being funny, but I realized he was being funny, but he was also like maintaining like the presumption of innocence. Although in this case, it's that he's doing the opposite. So I think he's just being funny. Right. Exactly. That's exactly it. MCAT. Yep. But it's really great because it's important to try to see things from all sides, but it is also, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And you need to be more. So like you're talking about, so you're saying, are you arguing now, Twiz, from the Commonwealth's perspective? I'm trying to figure out what you're saying. Karen hit him that hard that he didn't die from the cold, but the Commonwealth isn't saying that yet. They're saying he was clipped and that the ground did it, right? The ground did it seems to be kind of my takeaway from the opening statements. The ground did it. The blunt force trauma was the ground, the penetrometer of it all. He was never in the house, so why would Jen? Well, Jen's testimony is that Jen searched for it because Karen asked her, what you, dude, it's so convoluted. I feel like, yeah, that she searched for it because Karen asked her to. Isn't that what it was? Dude. Yep. Yep. Totally agree. MCAT. Twiz challenging us. All good. Yep. Totally. Mm-hmm. Explain the joke. Sorry. I think it'll still be funny though. But you said that, but then you were like, said you didn't see it, I thought. Anywho. Yep. Mm-hmm. George will stick. Classic George will stick. Who gave Jen an out, though? You guys know we have the Twiz emojis, right? The Twiz custom emojis there for the members. Love that. How's your workout, Twiz? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Banshee is a lot for me. Jen! She only does it in the Banshee voice. Pretty crazy. Pretty good. Anyone recognize that? Pretty good.
So
Anyway,
his ribs, his
all right,
chest, his arms, his
carrying
hips,
on.
his legs, his knees, his ankles, his feet, all of them. No broken bones,
Yeah, we
no
talked about
fractures,
that.
no contusions, no torn ligaments, no internal injuries, not even a bruise. Nothing consistent with a car accident, despite the Commonwealth's contention
Well done,
that he was
MCAT.
slammed into by a 6,000-pound SUV. Not a bruise. Dr. Laposada will tell you with medical certainty that, in fact, John was not struck by a vehicle. Medically and scientifically, he could not have been struck by a vehicle. Therefore, as I said, there was no collision.
Mm-hmm.
She will tell you that the patterned abrasions on John's right arm, the patterned abrasions you see over my left shoulder, they're not the result of being struck by a car or a taillight. You'll take one look at these injuries and you'll agree with Dr. Laposada. The evidence will show that these injuries are from an animal.
I mean, here's the thing. I just have to say, Breenan should have gotten out ahead of this. Breenan didn't even mention anything about the scratches on the arm. He should have gotten out ahead of this because these are fresh injuries, right? The thing is this. What both sides are going to fight over, right, is what this is from. But they're fresh injuries, right? And like, it seemed like maybe they were going to go the route the Commonwealth of like the taillight cracked and did this or whatever. I guess they're walking that back. That was sort of brought up last trial. I mean, obviously they don't have to do what they did last trial. But anyway, my point is this, is that if they're deciding not to go that route, they should have given something, right? Because these are so recent that clearly they were in close proximity to whatever else the fuck happened to him.
large dog, like the large dog that was inside the Albert house that night.
Justice for
You'll learn
Chloe.
that Brian Albert has actually admitted that his large dog, the family dog, is, quote, not good with strangers. And of course, John, never having been to the house before, was a stranger that night.
Oh
You'll
yeah,
also learn that oddly,
Angel Twiz is left-handed.
very oddly, after having their family pet for 7 years, a short time after this incident, the Alberts got rid of that dog.
Poor Chloe.
They called it rehoming her. But she was gone.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Laposado will also tell you that the injury to John's head was not the result of falling backward onto a flat lawn, cold or otherwise. Rather, Dr. Laposado will tell you with medical certainty that the injury pattern to his scalp was produced by an impact from a raised or ledged surface, a surface that does not exist on Brian Albert's front lawn where John was found. The medical evidence will establish no hypothermia, no injuries from a car strike, no collision with a motor vehicle. And forensic analysis of John's cell phone, Mr. Breenan mentioned that in his opening statement. The Commonwealth's own expert will ultimately support the exact facts that I just told you, including the temperature data. John O'Keefe was injured someplace warmer, and he was moved. That alone is reasonable doubt, but there's much more. You'll also learn that there were many people at that after-hours gathering at Brian Albert's house who would have left by the front door just feet from where John O'Keefe's body would have ultimately been had he actually been there.
That's why, again,
Right after 12:30 a.m.
That's why Breenan is.
The Commonwealth's
That's why
plan
Breenan is hanging his hat on that cell phone battery. That's so interesting. The temperature of the cell phone battery. I don't think that even came up in the first trial. Do y'all remember? I don't think it did.
There were nearly a dozen people who walked out that front door directly adjacent to the precise spot where John O'Keefe would have been lying. Not a single
What was
person.
weird was how all the testimony from all these different people was like they literally it seemed like their party was literally them sitting by the window and just looking out the yard. Did anyone else think that was weird? It's like, what type of party is that, right? They're sitting in different rooms just looking out the window and like not seeing anything but just looking out the window. Like, what type of party? I don't want to go to a party like that. It sounds lame. Just saying.
Person, not one.
Yeah. Okay.
Not a single person. Saw a 6'2", 216-pound man laying sprawled in the front lawn in
That's
dark clothing on a light white dusting of snow. Not one. Then the evidence will also show that every one of those same people drove by that same spot, not walked by it, drove by it to leave the house, and still not one of them saw John laying in the yard when they left between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning. But you know who else you'll find never saw a body on that lawn? The snowplow driver, a completely independent witness charged with plowing the streets in Canton that night. You'll hear that Michael Proctor, oh, he's not done yet, Mr. Proctor. You'll hear that Michael Proctor wrote a report where he claimed that Fairview had not been plowed that night. You'll learn that that was completely false. That was a lie. Michael Proctor did not want any more witnesses. He didn't want the truth. And he falsely claimed that the road was never plowed. You'll learn that he wouldn't look for the plow driver, but we did. And we found, and we'll introduce you to, Brian Loughran. He plowed Fairview that night, and what he's going to tell you is that there was no body on that lawn at 2:30 in the morning. You'll learn that Brian Loughran passed by 34 Fairview, traveling right next to Brian Albert's front yard, and at 2:30 a.m., John O'Keefe was not there. But you'll see that the plow driver also provides some other troubling information, troubling testimony for the Commonwealth. You'll learn that after making that pass at 2:30 a.m., he showed up with his plow an hour later. He stopped at the entrance of Fairview. He was looking up Fairview to decide whether or not to plow it, but he saw an obstruction. At 3:30 a.m., he looked down the street, and in the very spot precisely where Karen would later find John's body laying at 6 a.m., there was a car parked in front of it, a Ford Edge.
I just want to say real quick, yeah, the Ford Edge, right? Because this, again, one of those things that went by the wayside as more shit happened the first time. I was going to say, I'm blanking on his name right now, but it was the dude from the other police department who testified. I thought he was a great witness, and anyway, I think that his testimony could have been even maybe more, like, what's the right word? I don't know that it was brought up in closing arguments last time. Anyway, what was his name? The dude who testified about what was it, like the towing of the car and the tail light from from Dotton, maybe. So I'm sure. Yes, Barrows. Thank you, MCAT. That guy. Yeah, I thought he was another. It's just I'm thinking of like witnesses that were also really like vital to the defense, in my opinion, or really helpful. That like Lucky, yeah, Barrows or Barrows. I can't remember how they say it, but yeah, that dude also. I thought his testimony was really valuable as well.
You're going to ask yourself, who's moving a car at 3:30 in the morning
especially
into a
law
blizzard
enforcement too.
on the side of the road. You'll learn that Michael Proctor, the lead investigator, intentionally ignored this fact as well. He did no investigation to find out who owned a Ford Edge, but again, we did. And the evidence will establish that Ford Edge happens to be a favorite model of the Albert family. More than one Albert owned Ford Edge at the time. You'll learn that those facts will add to the mounting and the overwhelming evidence that there was no collision.
Dighton. Did I say
John
Dalton?
O'Keefe's body
Dighton. Thank
was
you.
moved onto that lawn.
Thank you.
You'll find that this is yet additional reasonable doubt in the case. You'll be introduced to science and physics, even from the Commonwealth's own experts. That science will establish that Karen Reed's SUV was not damaged by hitting a pedestrian, and conversely, John O'Keefe's injuries did not come from being
That's
struck
exactly right.
by a vehicle. The Commonwealth mentioned triggering events, but what you'll actually learn from the experts, some of them the Commonwealth's own experts, is that a triggering event is not evidence of an accident. It does not evidence a collision. That's why we're here. A collision.
Mhm.
And there's no evidence of one. Zero.
Just wanted to note that Judge Bev and most things that she does most of the time are a triggering event for me.
You'll also find that those exact sort of triggering events that the Commonwealth will rely on are relatively commonplace on Karen's SUV, and none of them are associated with a claim of a collision. Folks, the science will not lie, and the physics cannot lie. And that science will tell you with certainty there was no collision with John O'Keefe. You'll add that to that rising mountain of reasonable doubt. I want to take you back to the night in question, January 29th, for just a few minutes. Remember, Karen had gone home after dropping off John and John walking to the house.
She really is.
While Karen was asleep at home with John's 13-year-old niece, what were the people who had been at Brian Albert's house that night? What were they doing? While she slept, what you'll find and what the evidence will show is that they were extremely busy. You'll learn that after a long night of heavy drinking, Brian Higgins left the Albert residence, but he didn't drive home. Rather, he drove over to the Canton Police Department, where he kept an office at about 1:25 a.m. Not a Canton police officer, but he kept an office there. Why go back to his office at 1:25 a.m.? Why go back to the Canton Police Department at 1:25 in the morning on the night of a blizzard? You'll learn that while there, Higgins made a call.
After having drank 50 bazillion drinks, apparently that day, like insanity. I don't know how he was even alive.
At 1:30 a.m. Higgins will later deny that he made that call. You'll find that curious. And his explanation for that late night visit to Canton PD, you'll find that it changes nearly every time he's asked about it. You'll learn that after everyone left Brian Albert's house, Brian Albert actually claimed he had no contact with anybody else except his wife. No contact. Until he woke up the next morning. So he says.
Yeah,
and you'll learn that that too is a complete lie. His phone records establish that he placed a call to none other than Brian Higgins at 2:22 a.m. shortly after Higgins completed that late night visit over to Canton PD. You'll wonder, what did they possibly need to talk about at 2:22 a.m. that night? The evidence will establish that Brian Albert called Brian
Was there
Higgins
any romantic design happening, remember?
first. Brian Albert then disconnected that call when Higgins didn't answer it. Seconds later, Brian Higgins returned the call. Brian Albert then did answer that call. They spoke for 22 full seconds, had a conversation, then they both hung up their respective phones. You'll learn that when they were asked about these calls and conversations, both Brian Albert and Brian Higgins lied about it. Both of them. They said they never had a call with each other. But then ultimately, when they were confronted with their own cell phone records and they could no longer deny the calls, they were asked independently, explain yourself. And they both came up with the exact same explanation.
Yeah.
Butt dial. The evidence will make you question, why did Albert and Higgins speak at 2:22 a.m.? And why did they both try to cover up that phone call? You'll also learn after this incident and within days of one another, both Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, both police officers, both trained investigators, got rid of their phones. Both of them.
I don't get the Kanye reference, Twiz.
And what else you'll learn, Brian Albert got rid of. Shortly after this incident, Brian Albert got rid of his house.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
I liked this part a lot. I liked
his childhood home, a home that had been in the Albert family for generations.
I like this part a lot. My brain, as he was saying this, I was like thinking, so he got rid of his, like, I'm like thinking, where is he going with this? Right? He got rid of his dog, his phone, and his house. And like literally then he says exactly that. But I thought it was great.
He literally sold it mere months after this incident. Dog rehomed,
There it
phones
is.
destroyed,
There it is.
house sold. You'll learn that all these things happened shortly after the incident where John O'Keefe was found unresponsive and dying in Brian Albert's front lawn. And you'll also learn that Michael Proctor looked the other way. He did not investigate any of what I'm telling you. He pre-selected Karen Reed from the start. And he ignored everything and everyone else. Let's get back to what was happening with the others while Karen slept. What you'll learn during this trial is that Brian Albert's sister-in-law, you've heard her name before, Jennifer McCabe, she was at the waterfall that night, and she was over at the Alberts' house that evening as well. She left the after-hours gathering about 2 a.m., a little before 2 a.m., got home around 2 a.m. And you'll learn that according to the Commonwealth's own evidence from a forensic software program called Physical Analyzer made by Celebrite, it's considered the gold standard for forensic tools. You'll learn that a Google search was discovered on Jennifer McCabe's phone. A Google search that Michael Proctor and his investigators never revealed to us, but we found anyway. A Google search that was timestamped, according to their own data, at 2:27 a.m., 5 minutes after that 2:22 a.m. call that Higgins and Albert denied having. And that Google search on Jennifer McCabe's phone read, "Hoslong to die in cold." Hoslong to die in cold. Now, she misspelled the first word. Hos is supposed to be how, but the meaning's the same. How long does it take to die in the cold? Timestamped 2:27. And then that search was also noted by the same Celebrite program as having been deleted.
I have a question for y'all. Whose opening did y'all like better, Jackson's or Yanetti's from last time?
The evidence will force you to ask, why is there a search on her phone? Why is it logged at 2:27 a.m.? When the Commonwealth claims that she first learned of John's death and where his body was hours later at 6 a.m. So what you'll learn is that while Karen slept, here's what was actually happening by some other very busy bees. 1:25 a.m., Brian Higgins makes an unexpected visit to Canton PD. 1:30 a.m., he makes a phone call that he later...
I love it. I love that. So Happy Annie says Jackson. MCAT says Unetti. I'm going to make a busy bees thing. Don't worry, guys.
Denies ever making. At 2:22 a.m., Brian Higgins and Brian Albert talk. They both deny and lie about having made that phone call.
I just really hope a wildcat comes up at some point during this trial, because then I will die.
2:27 a.m., 5 minutes later, a Google search appears on Jennifer McCabe's phone, Hoslong to die in cold, hours before John's body was ever discovered. A Google search she denies making, and that she later, or at least it was later logged as deleted. Meanwhile, at 2:30 a.m., the plow driver confirms that O'Keefe's body was not on the lawn of Brian Albert's house, not at 2:30 in the morning. And at 3:30 in the morning, that area was obstructed by a Ford Edge like the one the Albert family liked to own. The evidence will show in the meantime, Karen dozed in and out of a fitful sleep for the rest of the night, only to awaken just before 5 a.m. And that's when she realized, in a panic, John had never come home. And you'll see, it wasn't like John to not come home. That morning, you'll see here evidence that Karen's emotions had morphed. It'd gone from frustration and anger, which you'll hear in the voicemails, to abject fear. Fear that something bad had happened. The evidence will establish by this time, Karen was panic-stricken. She had a feeling something was very, very wrong. She was unable to get a hold of John. Karen went to go look for him. She got in her Lexus and she backed up to leave her garage at One Meadows. You'll hear a lot about that address, One Meadows. That was John's house where Karen was staying. She backed out of the garage, and during the course of the trial, you'll hear that she actually struck another car with that right rear taillight.
No,
in the course of this trial,
now I'm like, wow, speaking of bees, right? Because Callie, the bee fish, I'm like, God, what was I thinking? I totally should have asked on Civil if he wanted to come on. Anyway,
Commonwealth is going to desperately claim.
Not that he would. I was just thinking, like, because you never know, bees and whatnot.
That Karen Reed's taillight was actually damaged by hitting John O'Keefe. They'll have no evidence of it, mind you, none. But they'll make the claim.
Anything is possible.
We'll show you a video of exactly how that taillight was originally damaged, or exactly what happened at 5:07 in the morning. The facts will show that it was damaged in John's own driveway at 5:07 when Karen backed up and made contact with another car in the driveway. This is 5 hours after she dropped John off and he went into the Albert residence. As a result, the taillight was minimally cracked, but it wasn't completely shattered or damaged or broken. And that's the condition of the SUV when Michael Proctor got a hold of it. That becomes important. You'll hear from an independent police officer, an eyewitness to the damage on that SUV, someone not connected to Michael Proctor or under his control. And he'll tell you that he saw the taillight damaged before it was in Michael Proctor's possession, but it was not completely shattered.
Yeah.
And you won't have to speculate how that taillight got cracked originally. You'll see it for yourself. It's on video.
I liked that
You'll
part.
learn that part of the reason that Karen's Lexus
Hi,
hit that
Doug.
car at One Meadows is because she backed out looking for him at a time when she was absolutely panic stricken.
I'll back up. Hi, Doug. Welcome. Great question here from Doug. Quick question. Does this jury panel even realize that this is technically nope, they sure don't. And actually, one thing I was saying earlier too is like, I wonder how long before they figure it out, right? Because, and we heard, especially with Nuttall, like on cross, right? He would reference like Jackson would reference, he would say like, you previously testified at the grand jury, right? And that's the jury's hearing, oh, okay, grand jury, fine. But then he would say, and you previously testified last year, and then not be specific. And so it happened enough times where I was like, if I were on the jury and I was, I would be like, so whatever the other thing is, it's not the grand jury, because when it's grand jury, they specify, and then there's something else that they don't specify. And I wonder if they are going to like hoss long before they figure it out, basically. I mean, it came up, there was a lot of that today. Happy Annie. You're very welcome. What are you, I don't think getting the jury to think Karen needs to prove. Okay, I think Happy Annie, are you responding to what MCAT said there about wanting the McAlberts to go to prison or what have you? Is that what, I think that might be what you're responding to there. Yeah, you're very welcome, y'all. Always happy to answer questions if I'm able to. Yeah, and that's very true, right? They likely know. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, they weren't told that. And again, the reason it made me thought of it is because like, what made me think of it was because the way Jackson repeatedly kept saying that, it's almost like he either doesn't care if they figure it out or he wants them to figure it out, which is interesting, right? Because it's like, it was almost became blatantly obvious. Like if you didn't want it to become like, there would have been, it would have been possible to ask the same questions and disguise it a little bit better if you wanted to, right? As to where the testimony came from. And so to me, it seemed almost like he wasn't trying to at all, right? If anything, it almost sounded like he was wanting to just point blank say it, but he just didn't say trial, right? If that makes sense. So Twiz, what are you doing, Twiz? Are you asking me that question?
That's on video. You'll learn that part of the reason that Karen's Lexus hit that car at One Meadows is because she backed out looking for him at a time when she was absolutely panic-stricken and grief-stricken. Where was John? Why hadn't he come home? What had happened to him? Is he hurt? Is he passed out somewhere? Her mind was reeling. The evidence will establish she wasn't giving anything away. Everything was on the table. What could have happened to John? You'll learn that when she woke up and he still wasn't home, she was just racking her brain for what could have happened to him. And she was worried about possibly the worst. He'd gotten out of the car. He'd walked to the house. She was confused. And later, when she found him at 6 a.m. on the lawn, and she last saw him going toward the house, her mind started reeling. Oh my God, did a plow hit him? Did I hit him? Could I have hit him? What could have happened to him? And that video clip that you saw, out of context, when she said the words, he did not look like he was mortally wounded, she's not talking about at midnight. She's talking about at 6 a.m. when she found him. That's what she was talking about. Your job will be to make sure that the evidence isn't presented to you too cute by half. She was saying all those things. Did a plow hit him? Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? She was saying that to herself and to other people. And the Commonwealth, very obviously, will try to seize on that panic and twist this into some admission. But here's the actual truth. That's not a confession. Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Could a plow have hit him? That's a person trying to make sense of an unexplainable circumstance, a natural concern of a bereaved significant other. A woman desperately trying to piece together what could have happened on this tragic night. John didn't come home. And the evidence will show that Karen Reed never said, I hit him. Never. Not in the background of the 911 recording, not on any Dashcam video, not on any audio, not on any police body cam, not to a first responder. Yeah. It's never mentioned in a single report. It's never reported in a single report from January 29th, not by one person, because it never happened.
Doug, you're always welcome to ask another question. But yeah, it's funny because the Google search is dumb, right? Like I always was thinking this last year. I'm like, this is such a dumb search, right? Because like, obviously it's going to depend on a fuck ton of variables. Obviously, like who would even be like the fact that someone Googled that blows my mind. Cold. You're not like how long to die in cold is like just the dumbest Google search ever, not even because of the typos, right? But like, for example, I just Googled it just to see, because I'm like, I'm like, there's no way to answer that question. And like, literally the answers are not even, there's no answer. It's just like, you know, for whatever reason, Google is like suggesting like suicide helplines. I have no idea why that was a response from Google, but also other than that, it's just like general info about hypothermia, but like, there's no answer to that, obviously. Cause it's, you know, it's just like, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? Right. 22, 350.
The evidence will show that the evidence will show that there were at least 13 members of law enforcement or first responders and 2 civilian witnesses that were intently focused on what was happening at that scene. They were all over the lawn. They were all over Karen. Officer Sarath, Mullaney, Good, Lank, EMT Nuttall, Flamati, Kelly, Walsh, Woodbury, Whitley, Becker, Robery, McLaughlin, Carrie Roberts, Jennifer McCabe. They were all there watching and listening. On January 29th, when John O'Keefe was found, not one first responder reported having heard Karen Reed say the words, "I hit him."
Yeah.
Not one. Not one civilian reported having heard Karen Reed say, "I hit him." The facts will show that the first time this improved statement was ever claimed to have been made was some 24 hours later by a single EMT in an interview. Now listen to this. In an interview coordinated by a Canton police detective named Kevin Albert.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Albert's brother. And remember, Chris Albert, the other brother, is a board selectman to whom the Canton Police Department reports. And what's more, you'll learn that Katie McLaughlin, that's the EMT, that's the single EMT, the first person to have claimed to have heard this unrecorded and unreported statement, is years-long, close personal friends with a young woman named Caitlin Albert.
Mm-hmm.
You heard that right. It's Brian Albert's daughter. During the course of this trial, you'll become familiar with and you'll realize that the Alberts are indeed a powerful and indeed an influential family. And that will mean something. You'll learn that there are other major problems with the prosecution's case. The evidence will establish that Michael Proctor himself, the lead investigator and architect of this entire case, has a long-standing and personal relationship with the Albert family. Yes, that same Albert family. His sister was close friends with Julie Albert. He personally sat at head tables at weddings, or at a head table at weddings with the Albert family. He entrusted the Alberts with babysitting his own children. You heard that correctly. And yet he was the lead detective assigned to investigate the circumstances of a Boston police officer laying dead on the Alberts' front lawn. That's not just bias, you'll learn. That's not just coincidence. That, folks, is corruption. And you'll see how far it went. Michael Proctor was alone with all the critical evidence in this case, alone with Karen Reed's phone, alone with John's phone, alone with video footage, alone with the taillight material, alone when he claimed to recover evidence from 34 Fairview. He wrote the search warrants, he transported the evidence, he secured it, he submitted it, he did it all. That's Michael Proctor. And he did it without any reasonable oversight. You'll see during the trial that he intentionally lied and fabricated evidence during the course of this investigation. He lied in reports, warrants, he lied under oath. He lied about the time that he actually secured Karen Reed's vehicle. Why? Why would he lie about that? The evidence will give you the answer. He lied because he did not want it revealed that he had access to that vehicle and he had access to that taillight before any taillight fragments were found at 34 Fairview. Appreciate that. He had access to the vehicle before a single piece of taillight material was ever found at the scene. You'll find that there were 2 searches. The first and second search found 0. Nothing. Nothing around John's body. Nothing in the street. Not one piece of taillight fragment. But once Michael Proctor had that SUV and had the taillight in his custody and control, suddenly items started magically showing up. And not just a few items. 46 pieces of bright red taillight laying in the snow. Supposedly found in the exact same spot that was searched not once, but twice by independent officers. Came up with 0. To be clear, you'll learn that before Michael Proctor had access to that taillight, not a single piece was ever recovered at 34 Fairview. That will become vitally, vitally important. And what about those shards of plastic, by the way? What about this DNA that the Commonwealth mentioned? They're going to try to dazzle you with talk of DNA because it sounds so scientific.
Dazzle you.
DNA was on the taillight, but you'll learn that there was no DNA on the actual shards that they claim came in contact with John's arm. None. There was no blood, no tissue, no skin, no DNA on a single shard of plastic that they claim cut deep abrasions into John's arm, the arm that you saw overhead. The DNA that was actually found, the actual science will show it was found outside of the taillight housing where anyone with access to that vehicle would have touched. And it wasn't just one male's DNA. In that exact same sample, there were 3 men found, John and 2 unidentified males. So unless the Commonwealth is going to shift their theory that that SUV hit 3 men that night, their entire theory falls apart. And speaking of DNA, the evidence will further establish that John O'Keefe's shoe, the one that he was wearing when he was found, was sampled. And that DNA revealed 5, count them, 5 unidentified males. Recall that the evidence will establish independently that John was injured someplace warmer and had to be moved onto that lawn. 5 unidentified males touching that shoe. You'll also learn that you are not the first person, not the first to hear about the Commonwealth's theory of this case, that John was hit by an SUV. That's their theory. The Commonwealth presented this exact same claim to their own medical examiner, a woman by the name of Dr. Irini Scorti-Bello. And you'll learn that after reviewing what's called a law enforcement accident notifier, with law enforcement's theory of the collision written in it, defined in it, after conducting the autopsy herself, after examining John's injuries in detail, she refused to conclude that John's death was a homicide based on the Commonwealth's presentation and their theory. That's right. The Commonwealth's own medical examiner will not deem the manner of death in this case, a homicide. She won't do it. But they're nonetheless back again trying to present the exact same theory to you in this trial. Again, the evidence will show that that is reasonable doubt. Throughout this trial, the Commonwealth will try to convince you of paranormal events, phones calling themselves, messages deleting themselves, Google searches made and then unmade, evidence magically appearing and evidence magically disappearing. But all that smoke and all those mirrors will not ever reach their burden. Because that's what this case is ultimately about. It's about the Commonwealth's burden of proof. You'll learn that during the trial, the Commonwealth bears the highest burden known to our justice system. They must prove every element of every charge beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. And you'll learn that moral certainty means the highest level of certainty known in human affairs. It's not a small thing. They're not going to be able to do that. Not when every piece of this case was handled by a disgraced investigator with a motive to protect his friends, not when the physical evidence contradicts their very theory, not when their own medical examiner won't call this case a homicide based on the exact theory that they're presenting to you, not when the conduct of those in the House and the utter lack of investigation speaks volumes about those who actually have something to hide.
Again.
By the end of this trial, you'll conclude that Karen Reed is not guilty of hitting John O'Keefe with her SUV. There was no collision. She's the victim of a botched and biased and corrupted investigation that was never about the truth, folks. It was about preserving loyalty. You'll find that this case is the very definition of reasonable doubt. And at the end of this trial, we'll ask you to return the only verdicts, all 3 of them, that are consistent with the evidence, the science, the truth, and justice. Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Folks, why don't we take our morning recess?
Okay. So now we're going to go to Nuttall and we're going to go to Cross.
That was just played.
This Cross is amazing. I feel like he looks way different. Do you guys remember him looking way different last time? And like, he just seems very different. Let's see. I don't know. Let's see where we are here.
And onto the stretcher, and then from there we can move from the stretcher to the ambulance.
After you lift him to the stretcher, tell us what happens.
Oh, there's Breenan. Okay.
Sir, do you recognize what's in that photograph?
Sure, one more time, you're going to...
All right. This Cross was so good, dude. So good.
Statements are inconsistent with one another, correct?
Oh, God, this is just so good.
Just, again, repeated what I said. And so that
the prior testimony that you...
Again, it was the, how many times?
I literally said the same thing to MCAT. Like, he looks way older than 28. I couldn't believe it when he said that. Yeah, for sure. He looks like a way skinnier, though, maybe too.
We had talked about saying, I hit him. Again, it was 3 times.
It's a mess. This is just an absolute mess. This whole thing is a mess with him. And remember, like I said, it's so funny because he's like the Commonwealth hero from the opening statement. And then you've got Proctor for the defense is like the villain. And it's funny because they both, the juxtaposition, right, was so interesting. So this is the hero. And remember, I was talking about how like it was so interesting how, like, why did he focus so much on Nuttall? Like, it's all about Nuttall, the whole, so much time and emphasis on him and how reputable he is and the meticulous ambulance and all this and whatnot, and the calm air. And it's like, why is he putting so much like, why is this so? But it becomes, this cross-examination makes it really clear why. I don't know why. The thing I don't know why is why Brennan thought it would help or work to like as if the jury's going to just not see this. I don't know. Wow. It was
Your memory. I'm not talking about the royal you. I'm talking about you.
In certain settings, I mean, there are certain things about different aspects that I recall better than others.
Okay. And does your memory tend to get better or does it fade over time? That's my question.
It can fade over time, but it depends on the context.
But in this case, you're telling this jury that your memory is better now than it was a year ago when you testified about the exact same circumstance, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You then met about a week after that, which would be 2 weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
Who'd you meet with then?
The same group.
And what did you discuss at that meeting?
Again, just prior testimony, and that was really the gist of it.
And tell me the specifics of the prior testimony that you.
Again, it was the how many times we had talked about saying I hit him. Again.
okay. I think I didn't actually go back far enough because I think there's a little bit more.
Prior to today, how many times have you testified under oath concerning the incident on January 29th, 2022?
Once at a grand jury hearing and once last year.
All right. It was about like last year in this courtroom.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you look over your testimony at the grand jury 3 weeks ago during that meeting?
No, sir.
What about the testimony from last year?
We did go over the testimony from last year. Yes, sir.
Were there any issues that Mr. Breenan or anybody else in that meeting brought up concerning any of your testimony?
There was just a question of how many times the I hit him came up. It was 3 times.
And were you advised that that's not what you said at your testimony last year?
No,
2 times?
What was that?
You said it was 2 times last year?
I honestly can't recall, sir.
Okay. But you just saw that, or you just read that and went over that 3 weeks ago.
I believe so, sir. Yeah.
But you can't remember, as you sit here today, just 3 weeks ago, what y'all discussed in terms of how many times you previously testified that you heard the phrase, I hit him.
So previously testified possibly to 2, but it was 3.
Okay. Your memory is clearer now than it was, for instance, a year ago when you testified.
Repeat that?
Sure. Your memory is clearer now, as you sit here, that it was 3 times you heard that, than it was a year ago when you testified that it was 2 times.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does your memory get better with time generally? Your memory. I'm not talking about the royal you. I'm talking about you.
In certain settings, I mean, there are certain things about different aspects that I recall better than others.
Okay. And does your memory tend to get better or does it fade over time? That's my question.
It can fade over time, but it depends on the context.
But in this case, you're telling this jury that your memory is better now than it was a year ago when you testified about the exact same circumstance, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
His face.
You then met about a week after that, which would be 2 weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
Who'd you meet with then?
The
He
same.
really does, MCAT.
And what did you discuss at that meeting?
Again, just prior testimony, and that was really the gist of it.
And tell me the specifics of the prior testimony that you.
Again, it was the how many times we had talked about saying I hit him. Again, it was 3 times, and then there was also the video that was just played for me.
If I'll take the video in just a second. If y'all had met 3 weeks ago and you indicated to Mr. Breenan that it was actually 3 times, not 2 times that you heard the I hit him, why did you need to discuss it again a week later to verify the 3 times versus 2 times?
Not sure, sir. That was just the way that the conversation went, and I just repeated what I said and what I remember from that morning.
Well, tell me about that conversation. Did Mr. Breenan say anything like, well, are you really sure that she said it 3 times?
It was that morning what was said to you. And I said, I hit him. That was how it went that morning, and that was how I remember it.
Okay. And did Mr. Breenan say, well, that's not consistent with how you've testified previously
Even appears to
concerning the number of times
Oh,
you heard
yeah.
the I hit him phrase?
Yes, sir.
He did say that.
Yeah.
He wanted to, he acknowledged that I had said it twice. However, again, as I mentioned, it was said 3 times to me.
So now you do remember last year.
Miss,
that you
how's your
only said it-
workout?
That you only said that it was repeated twice.
One more
Correct?
time, sir.
So now you do recall that last year when you testified,
this is
it
a
was
mess.
inconsistent with how you're testifying today. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Correct?
I believe I said I hit him twice on the stand last year.
Right. And if you're saying I hit him 3 times instead of twice,
He's still in
that firefighter Nuttall is inconsistent with your testimony today. Correct? You
Yes,
agree
sir.
with that?
But that is how it went that morning, though, sir.
Okay, that's not my question. Let me see if I can do it again. So
Oh,
I'm
boy.
asking you, if you testified last year,
If I were him, I'd be like, okay, what can I do to get out of here? Like, can I literally just, like, what would happen if I just ran? Like, what if I just go run and find a cave to hide in? Like, literally, like that would be what I would be thinking.
Yes, sir.
But you heard the phrase twice.
Mhm.
And now a year goes by and you're testifying in front of
Oh,
history.
I mean, here, he has chewing
Those
tobacco
two
on the
statements are
stand.
inconsistent with one another, correct?
What?
Yes, sir.
Is that allowed?
Did you talk at the meeting
Okay.
2 weeks ago about any other inconsistencies with your
Want to come
testimony?
on,
Not to my
Twig?
knowledge, sir.
Well, you were there. You
No.
say not to my knowledge, meaning,
No, sir. We did not.
okay. So it was just about the number of times that you heard the phrase, I hit him,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
All right. You cleared that up in the two meetings, 3 weeks ago and 2 weeks ago. What did you talk about last night?
Mostly just making sure that everything was as it had been. I mean, and by that, I mean, it was 3 times and that we were continuously making sure that everything was the way that it had happened that morning.
Everything was the way that Mr. Breenan wanted it to be.
No, sir. The way that it was I remember it and I recall it happening.
Okay. So he asked you 3 weeks ago about how many times you heard that phrase.
Yes, sir.
You changed your testimony at that time and said it was 3 times instead of 2 times. We agree on that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Then he called you a week later or met with you a week later and again reiterated, making sure you stick with that testimony that it's 3 times, not 2 times, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then last night he called you just to make sure one more time you're going to stick with that testimony that it was 3 times, not 2 times, correct?
Yes, sir.
Hold on just a second. May I have just a moment? Your
Yes.
Right. I mean, I'm like, yeah, I can't believe I would not have thought you're allowed to have chewing tobacco on the stand. I mean, you can't have gum usually either. I say usually.
Okay.
Murdoch isn't-
And when you talked last night, did you assure Mr. Breenan, nope, nope, nope. When we come in tomorrow, I'm certainly going to say
I love the nope, nope, nope.
it was 3 times, not 2 times.
No, sir. I told him I would tell my recollection of that morning.
Okay. And did you tell him that what my recollection is? I'm going to tell the jurors it was 3 times that I heard it.
That was what I heard.
Okay. Did you tell him that's what you were going to say today?
No, sir.
You didn't?
I told him I was going to tell him what I remembered from that morning.
Which was what?
I hit him. I hit him. I hit him.
Which is how many times?
3 times, sir.
And that's inconsistent with what?
I believe a year ago.
Okay. Now you also talked about, I want to get back to the other thing that you talked about. You said that at some point, either in the meeting
Yeah,
3 weeks ago, the
Google
meeting
that
2 weeks
shit.
ago, or the
And
meeting
that-
last night, you were shown a video.
Yes, sir.
Which one of those meetings were you shown a video?
I believe the second one.
Okay. Were you shown the entire video?
No, sir.
Just the clip that we saw?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What did y'all talk about in relation to that video?
Mostly nailing down who was who in that video.
Okay.
Being the other personnel on scene, where I was, and that was about it.
He showed you the clip that you showed. Sorry, he showed you the clip that you just seen on direct examination, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you tell him where you were?
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. Breenan ask you to define exactly where it was that you supposedly heard this phrase, I hit him?
No, I was able to give that to him, sir.
Okay. And what you told him was that moment when you see my client walk over sort of to the left of the screen, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you defined, that's the point at which she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Yes, sir.
And that's in response to your question. I want to make sure I'm clear about this. You asked, do you know him?
Yes, sir.
And she repeated the phrase 3 times, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Correct.
Okay. We'll talk more about that in just a second. Did Mr. Breenan ask anything else about that specific video?
No, like I said, he kind of asked me to point out different individuals on the scene, and that was really the extent of it.
You saw that same video last year when you testified, correct?
No, sir.
You didn't see it last year?
Not to my knowledge, no.
In preparation for
Lord.
your testimony last year?
I did not.
Did you see it before your grand jury testimony?
No, sir.
Okay, so this is the first time that you've seen it.
Yes, sir.
And you were able to establish for Mr. Breenan exactly when it was that you believe you heard the statement based on your view about 2 weeks ago of that video.
No, that was the way that I remember it.
Right,
That
that's
one.
not a trick question. My question is much more simple. You were able to establish after than 3.5 years now.
It's funny because every
exactly.
time Jackson says that, because it happens a couple times where he's like, my question is a lot more simple. Every time he says that, Mr. Nuttall looks way more concerned when he says that. It's pretty funny.
Where you were and where Miss Reed was and who else was around at the time that you believe you heard those 3 statements in order. I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You testified last year as well that there is a normal protocol for removing clothing from a patient, and it's essential to just discard it and get it away from the patient so that you can concentrate on the life-saving measures that you're undertaking, correct?
Yes,
That could be done you said in the ambulance, it could be done in the hospital, it could be done in situ out there in the field, correct?
Yes, sir.
But the point is you want to get as much clothing off of the person as possible so that you can assess that person's physiology.
Yes, sir.
It's not really a lot of care taken to
So
preserve.
I'm gonna skip over this little part. This is where, he impeaches him about the coat. I mean, it's in other words, there's myriad issues here, but there's certain things in here that are especially epic. Okay, he works for Brockton. Well done, MCAT, on that Googling. Okay.
The video, it looks cold as hell, right?
It was chilly.
All right. John,
Puffy jacket.
and I said, your memory of him having that big puffy, correct?
Correct.
All other than just 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
By the way, y'all let me know in the chat if there's anything you want to hear. Sorry, this part's funny. If there's anything you want to revisit from Carrie Roberts' testimony. Otherwise, what we'll do is when we finish going through the highlights of his cross, we'll go to the hearing part, which again, I have not seen yet, but because it was the court TV feed ended. So let me know if there's anything you want to revisit from Carrie Roberts' testimony. Again, we watched all of it earlier, but if there's anything you want to go back and see.
When I asked what y'all talked about, why didn't you tell us
Couldn't
that?
agree more.
Perfectly honest, sir.
Sorry, just have to say the twerk out is everything. Yep. That's what I was like, oh my God, if you combine Twiz and workout, you get twerk out. Like, yes, life is made now.
And I said appropriately dressed.
So you did talk about something other than just, I hit him, correct?
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
When I asked what y'all talked about, why didn't you tell us that?
To be perfectly honest, sir, I did not remember until right now.
Twiz.
So your memory is fading even after 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Got it.
Amazing. Amazing. It's so good.
The fact is, well, let me ask you a different question. Did Mr. Brennan tell you what Mr. O'Keefe was actually wearing?
No, sir. Actually, I believe you did.
Last year, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
It's a short sleeve t-shirt and a little thin wool hoodie, right?
Yes, sir.
Wasn't wearing a hat.
No, sir.
Wasn't wearing,
Long
didn't even have a
sleeve
shoe
is
on.
what it was.
Not to my knowledge.
I mean, I wouldn't call it a hoodie. A hoodie is a sweatshirt, in my opinion. It's a long. I mean, I know exactly what it is. I love shirts that are like, I love a hood, right? It's a long sleeve t-shirt with a hood, but it's not. It's not a hoodie. Like hoodie has the connotation of being a sweatshirt, which is way more heavier duty.
And obviously, goes without saying, but I'm going to ask it anyway. That's not being appropriately dressed for the winter. You indicated that you did notice certain injuries on Mr. O'Keefe's person.
Sir.
Once you got him back in the
I'm gonna skip this part with the pharaohs, right? All that was funny, but yeah, okay. The eyes, they have actually this part with the eyes is good. Let's do this one. Again, let me know if there's any part of Carrie Roberts' testimony you want to revisit,
from
guys.
the back of the head injury for just a second.
Exactly. That's exactly right. It's just a cotton t-shirt.
Before I get to that in detail, let me ask you, because I just sort of want to cover the bases. You noted the back of the head injury, correct? Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
You also noted the front right side of the head above the right eye, correct?
We did.
You noted some injury to his eyes. They looked blackened.
Yes, sir.
But primarily the right eye was blackened.
Yep.
And there was a golf ball size egg, I think you put it, over his right eye, often called a hematoma.
Correct.
And you also noted when you got his shirt off that he had scratches along the right side of his arm. Is that right?
Sure.
You indicated on direct examination today that you believe those scratches ended where? Meaning from top to bottom? And I'm not using anatomically correct language. So from shoulder to wrist, where were the scratches that you noted?
There were several. As I noted, they were on his right humerus area.
Tell me what a humerus is.
The right arm.
Biceps.
Right about here.
Okay.
No, a little further, like where your bicep and your tricep kind of meet. Right about in there.
Okay. And what did the scratches look like?
They were deep. Infamously referred to them as furrows. But they were quite deep. You could tell that there had been some material removed.
Okay. Material meaning skin and flesh.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Some biological material.
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
And were they parallel? Meaning they were going in the same direction?
Yes.
Were there any scratches below the elbow?
There were. Yes, there were. They were not as significant as the ones on the upper arm, but they were noted.
Okay. And those were parallel as well?
Yes, sir.
And they look like scratches to you. That's how you describe them?
They did.
Last year, when you described those scratches, you curled your fingers up, exposing sort of the nails, and drew it across your biceps. Is that what you were using to describe what the sort of scratches look like?
I just kind of used that as a landmark, to be honest with you, sir. It was just kind of how I quantified it in my mind.
Okay. But what you did was you did this motion.
Again, we're going to go ahead here a little bit. Okay.
The laceration, obviously. I mean, it could be a golf club, a baseball bat, or it could be a fist.
It could be.
Okay. We talked about that last year. I asked you if the injuries you saw on Mr. O'Keefe's face, including the laceration over his right eye, was consistent or inconsistent with a physical altercation, and you said it was consistent with a physical altercation as well.
Excuse me?
Objection to referring to past testimony before a question is asked.
So sustained.
Sure. Do you remember a laceration, in addition to the hematoma, about a 0.8 centimeter laceration over his right eye?
I do.
Tell me I'm using a word that maybe not everybody understands. I didn't understand it when we first started this thing. What's a laceration? What's the difference between that and a cut?
a laceration is they're basically the same thing. A laceration is just a deep cut.
Okay, so it's a parting of the skin.
Correct.
In other words, where the skin separates.
Yes.
And that can be from blunt force trauma, meaning something hits it rather than cuts it.
You can get
What are some of the causes of lacerations?
You can get a laceration, as you noted, blunt force, but you can also get a laceration from a slashing movement, from a stabbing. I mean, that is still a laceration.
What about hematoma?
That is primarily caused by blunt force trauma.
Right. And the hematoma and the laceration were right next to each other, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you indicated last year, or let me ask you this way. Is that consistent or inconsistent with physical altercation?
Objection.
Can you answer that?
I could not say, Your Honor.
Okay, next question.
Well, last year, you indicate you can't answer that. Last year, you did answer it, didn't you?
Objection.
So I need to see counsel at sidebar for just a minute, please.
Oh Lord. Okay. Look at him. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. All the things. Okay. They're at sidebar. Sidebar. So is he getting all squeaky clean?
You are.
Your Honor, my apologies. That's actually a moot point at this point, so that there's no.
Oh, okay.
Fire, correct?
Yes, so she ended up driving ambulance 1 to Good Samaritan.
And ambulance 1 was which ambulance?
Ambulance 1.
No way. They can't. No. They can't let them know that. No. Again, if they came into the voir dire and they had some sort of knowledge, which is possible, that's different, but they're not telling them, and they're not, again, the questioning is interesting because it almost seems like Alan doesn't really care, but it's not something that normally it would be a huge, motion for mistrial, right? It's considered to be typically, right? It's like, it's prejudicial against the defendant, but that's why it's interesting that Alan Jackson seems to honestly not care. And it could be because, maybe during voir dire, they kind of got the feeling that everybody already knew about it anyway. So they're still not going to say it out loud, but like, maybe it's sort of like, yeah, we all know, we're just not saying it, type thing. But yeah, they're not going to tell them if they didn't already know. They're not going to you know what I mean? Again, because again, it would be hugely prejudicial typically to the defendant, in like mistrial city. So, right. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Last year. Yeah. Again, but it's sort of like, I feel like the jury's going to figure it out though, but yeah.
One was the initial ambulance that myself, firefighter Kelly, and firefighter Flamati responded in.
So right after the scene that you described, as you're leaving the scene, firefighter McLaughlin is in the ambulance with you and firefighter Flamati, correct?
She is driving. So the three of us are in the back in the patient compartment. She is up front in the driver's seat.
Once at the hospital, did firefighter McLaughlin go into the hospital with the other firefighters?
I believe so, yes.
So she was with you in the engine. She was, although in the driving cab, she was with you, ambulance in the driving cab. She was also with you right after the scene at the hospital, correct?
Yes, sir.
And she was also
technically, Judge Bev could also be concerned that it's prejudicial to the Commonwealth, right? That some jurors might think, oh, well, they couldn't get a conviction the first time, their case sucks, right? So it could go either way there, but yeah. And if they keep saying last year and jurors figure it out, then it is what it is, right? But yeah, they're not going to say.
Also with you later after you cleared the hospital and went back to the station.
Yes, sir.
You had discussions with firefighter Flamati about the incident. That would be normal protocol.
Correct.
Almost like a debrief.
Sure.
You had the same types of discussions with firefighter Kelly, Matt Kelly.
Yes, sir.
I'm guessing that you probably had the same sorts of discussions with firefighter Walsh.
I actually don't know if I saw firefighter Walsh when we got back. The weather was right at shift change, and the weather getting back was also getting worse. So I honestly couldn't speak to that.
And you also had conversations with firefighter McLaughlin after you cleared the hospital and got back to the station as well.
She was part of the debrief, yes, sir.
Okay. And all of you discussed what you did, saw, and heard, generally speaking, while at the scene, correct?
Those are more in terms of getting equipment wrangled, really kind of how they go. What did we use? What do we need? What are we going to have to restock when we get back?
Right. But there also was obviously discussions about what had just happened. I mean, you were dealing with a dead or dying police officer on a lawn, on a snow-covered lawn in a cold environment.
I honestly couldn't speak to that, sir. I honestly don't remember.
It's because you don't remember, correct?
Well, like I said, it's mostly those debriefs are they're very equipment oriented because the goal at that point is to get back in service.
My question is not about the equipment. Obviously, you're going to discuss the equipment, make sure that the ambulance is ready for the next call, et cetera. I'm asking about a general debrief with the fellow firefighters, male and female, that you were with at that scene. You're telling me that you don't remember debriefing and discussing the incident and your observations at the incident following that incident.
No, sir.
Okay, but your memory, you indicated earlier, gets better with time, right?
Yes, sir.
You don't remember it as you sit here today?
And this is great. I
Ask
just
the question again.
Sure. Do you remember discussing with firefighter Flamati, firefighter Walsh, firefighter Kelly, firefighter McLaughlin, any of them, your observations and what happened while at the scene after you cleared the hospital and got back to the station?
No, sir.
Have no memory of that whatsoever.
No, sir.
When we left off before lunch, I was asking you about a hematoma and a laceration over the right eye of Mr. O'Keefe. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
I asked you, is being punched in the face, can that lead to a small laceration like you saw and a hematoma like you saw?
Objection.
I'm going to allow it. Can you answer that question?
I couldn't speak to how that injury occurred.
Yeah, so
Is it
there's a number of
consistent?
these where Bev was like, can you answer that question? And that's where it was like, you know, she was essentially overruling the Commonwealth, but she's not going to say that because it's biased.
Are those injuries, just those injuries, are those consistent with being punched in the face?
Those injuries could be sustained from numerous ways.
And
Yes, it could be from that. It could be from others as well.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking. It could be. In other words, it's consistent
Yes,
with
sir.
being punched in the face, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
This is another one of my favorite parts. There's so much hullabaloo going on here, and meanwhile, he's just sitting there making faces. This is just amazing. I just love like this shit show in the background is perfect for what is happening on the stand right now.
Yes,
It's
sir.
being punched in the face, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I want to ask you about the statement that you indicate that you heard that now is 3 statements, 3 phrases, correct?
Yes, sir.
When you heard this statement, describe for me exactly where you were. What were you doing and who was around you?
I was knelt at the head of John O'Keefe with a bag valve mask, delivering ventilations. Firefighter Kelly was to the right, and firefighter Flamati was on the left side of Mr. O'Keefe, and the 3 of us together were working to perform CPR and ventilations.
And your job, and I hate to butcher it, but
Nope.
you'll correct me.
Yes, sir.
Your job was to do the airway, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I'm picturing a big balloon-like apparatus that you put over the patient's mouth and
Exactly.
squeeze it.
Yes.
That's as opposed to it's an advancement on just mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
You were the airway person doing the squeezing of the bag.
Correct.
What was Tony Flamati, firefighter Flamati, doing?
He was starting CPR, and which that point was taken over by firefighter Kelly.
Okay, so firefighter Flamati, when you say starting CPR, describe what that means. What is the physical act of CPR?
So you put both hands together like this, one on top of the other. You put it right on top of the sternum, and you begin doing chest compressions 2 inches deep, allowing full recoil.
And now we're back into the gutter again here with the 2 inches deep, and then the thrusting, and the dude, it just goes off the rails with
For
this.
100 to 120 beats per minute, compressions a minute.
Just the
to-
rhythmic pumping.
To sustain a
Just-
cardiac rhythm. You're manually making the heart beat with each compression.
Which means that is a rhythmic pumping motion, correct?
Yes, sir.
A rhythmic
So if you
pumping
see
motion,
someone doing
great.
CPR, you're probably going to see their shoulders moving up and down and moving rhythmically, correct?
Correct.
Do you remember what firefighter
Then just
Flamati was
switching
wearing?
off.
You had just come off of
Getting tired.
actually, you were just coming onto a shift, so you didn't have all your foul weather gear officially, correct?
I had my puppy jacket.
Okay.
I had my Canton Fire jacket.
Got it. Firefighter Flamati, on the other hand, had a bright yellow jacket,
Correct.
sort of reflective and a safety jacket.
Yes, sir.
And he was kneeling to your left at the time doing, have I got that right?
Yeah, no, yep, you got that right.
Okay, he's kneeling to your left at the time doing chest compressions. That's when you indicate that Miss Reed walked over and made the statement.
Correct.
And Kelly was there as well?
Yes, sir.
Kneeling right beside all 3 of you as firefighter Flamati was giving the chest compressions, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You indicated that the statement was in response to a question that you asked of my client, do you know him?
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Correct.
And she responded to you with the phrase that you've used, I hit him.
I hit him.
Right. So it's absolutely clear in your mind when that statement was made. You were knelt down over Mr. O'Keefe. Firefighter Flamati was doing the CPR, and Kelly was with both of you when you posed that question.
Yes, sir.
It's a very detailed memory.
Yes, sir.
You indicated, Mr. Breenan, that sticks out in your mind. Is that right?
It does.
But that's not at all what you told Trooper Proctor on February 8th just 10 days after this incident, is it?
I don't recall what I told Trooper Proctor.
I thought your memory got better with time.
I don't recall that meeting. I recall meeting with him, but I don't recall the extent of what was discussed.
You literally don't recall anything that was discussed in that meeting.
I don't think he did.
Interview
That was just
with the lead
not-
detective on this case.
We discussed the case, but I don't, in his words, I'm not sure what
Oh
he
God.
put down.
What you said to Trooper Proctor on February 8th, 10 days after this, was you overheard Miss Reed say, "I hit him," one time to another female that she was talking to, correct?
Objection.
No, I'll allow it. Did you say that?
I have no memory of this, Your Honor.
Okay, next question.
Did you say that her statement was an answer to a question posed by the female or a discussion with the female?
Break that down for me, sir.
Sure. Did you tell Trooper Proctor on February 8th that what you heard was Karen Reed speaking to a female, not answering a question that you posed?
Again, I don't recall that specific question.
Did you tell Trooper Proctor on February 8th while you were rendering aid, and at the time you heard the statement, Miss Reed was actually praying over John? Your words, praying over John.
I don't recall ever saying that.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Night, cat. If that's what you mean by out. Oh my God, his face though. It's just, look, y'all, what a mess. Yeah,
Yes,
this
Your
is
Honor.
the talking to himself, right? Talking to himself. There it is. Wow. By the way, after we finish with this, we're gonna also do some more curve if you guys want on Discord. Larry David.
Did you say that you observed Karen Reed to have blood on her face from providing mouth-to-mouth breaths to Mr. O'Keefe prior to your arrival?
I remember Miss Reed having blood on her face, presumably from
Back
the
to
temple.
then, I'm just gonna skip ahead a little bit because they revisit a lot of this stuff here in like the recross. They end up doing like recross. Anyway, let's just see here. I mean, he just gets obliterated over and over again. It's really a lot of it. Okay.
And you're also not saying that you didn't say to Trooper Proctor that you saw Karen Reed praying over John O'Keefe.
Objection.
So I'd like you to ask that differently. Did you say that?
I have no recollection of saying that ever.
Next question.
My point is, if you have no recollection of it, you're not denying saying it.
Objection.
Are you denying saying that?
Yes.
So you do have a recollection that you never said it. Did you understand the difference?
Oh, sir, I don't believe I've ever said praying. That's really not something that I would have said. I didn't see it that day. It didn't happen. I don't remember ever saying prayed.
You didn't
in
see
regards
it
to this case ever.
You didn't see it that day, and it never happened. That was your words just now, correct?
Break that down for me.
You didn't see it that day, and it never happened. That's what you're saying about the praying statement, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in that same exact statement, you also included the phrase, "I hit him," correct?
No, sir.
In the statement that you made to Trooper Proctor,
The report that Trooper Proctor wrote?
correct?
Again, I don't remember ever
What
saying
about
the words
the other?
praying over him. I do distinctly remember I hit him.
Which doesn't appear in that report, does it?
Objection.
I'm going to sustain that, Mr. Jackson. You directed him only to page 2.
Understood, Your Honor. I'd like to show you a short portion of a video, the same video that you were asked to look at on direct examination. And Your Honor, I pray to the court, I can certainly mark it as a defense exhibit or for
So is this
identification.
going to be an exhibit by agreement?
It is.
It
Okay,
is.
So we now that, Madam Court Reporter, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. With the court's permission, may I play a portion of that video for the jurors, publish it?
Okay. Which portion so people know?
I'm going to start it at about, I want to say 6:55.
Okay, so the video.
Good, cue that up.
We want to through this a bit. Okay.
So that is 34 Fairview Road. The lights in the background, I believe it is either right as we pulled up or right as we're pulling up.
Okay, same dashcam video.
Sir.
Can we scroll this to the 6:55 runtime spot, please? Pause it. Okay. Do you see the individual on the left? Far left.
Yeah, the jacket?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Who's that?
I believe that's firefighter Flamati.
You previously indicated that when you heard Ms. Reed make this statement, the firefighter Flamati was on his knees providing CPR at the same time you were knelt down providing the airway.
This isn't when it was
That's not
stated.
my question. Is that what you said?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. You indicated earlier when you heard this statement by my client, you were very detailed. Firefighter Flamati was knelt down providing chest compressions at the same time you were knelt down providing airway support for Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
I had also said that at some point,
That's a
firefighter
yes or no
Flamati
question.
had.
Objection.
So I'm going to let the witness.
One
answer
thing
the
that
question.
I think is
Transfer
interesting
CPR.
about all these questions about kneeling down, there's a lot of kneeling. There's like the kneeling down for CPR. There's like kneeling down and praying, right? And then there's like kneeling down and whatever else it was. There's a lot of kneeling, which is just interesting. I don't know if there's a reason for
Firefighter
that.
Flamati was knelt down providing chest
Explanations
compressions
for kneeling,
at the
maybe? I
same
don't
time
know.
you were knelt down providing airway support for Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
I had also said that at some point,
That's a
firefighter
yes or no
Flamati
question.
had
Objection.
So I'm going to let the witness answer the question.
transferred CPR to firefighter Kelly. Firefighter Kelly did take over compressions at one point.
Okay. That's not my question. Okay. My question is an easy one. Did you say that when Miss Reed walked over to you and you had this dialogue with her, she made that statement that firefighter Flamati was on his knees providing chest compressions at the same time you were knelt down providing airway support?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Firefighter Flamati, your testimony appears to be standing up right there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Let's play the video forward for just a second. Stop it. What did you see firefighter Flamati do just now?
I believe he just knelt down.
Okay. So at this point, he's kneeling for the first time, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he's about to provide chest compressions as your memory serves, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's go ahead and play it forward. Pause. Did you see my client in that photo? I'm sorry, in that clip?
No, sir.
You didn't see her?
Oh, no, I did see her. Yeah. I don't see her on right now.
Right. She just walked off frame, correct?
Sure.
Let's go ahead and play it forward.
You know, if the ground was really so hard, wouldn't they have all had bruises on their knees from all the kneeling? Just saying.
Stop it. You see my client walk back into the frame?
Yes, sir.
At this point, you were watching firefighter Flamati. He appears to be now providing CPR, correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. And my client is nowhere near you, correct? At least for this clip.
No, sir.
Okay.
Correct.
And the clip that I just played before, the few seconds that I played before, nowhere near you, correct?
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Let's go ahead and play it forward.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to redirect.
Firefighter Flamati come after you.
Yes, sir.
You are no longer knelt down. Play it forward.
Yes, sir.
Do you notice any differences between that video and when I showed it to you, and that it doesn't have the time on it?
Yes, those were two different time frames on that video.
And when we spoke about when the defendant said to you, I hit him, that wasn't shown to you in that video just now, was it?
No, it was not.
So if we go back, will you be able to explain where you came from and firefighter Flamati came from and when you first went over to John O'Keefe?
Sure.
With the court's permission, Ms. Gilman, if you could start that video. I think it is 6:11, please. Now stop it there. Do you see that this exhibit has timestamp on the top?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please continue. Could you stop, please? Do you see the red lights on the left?
Yes, sir.
Is that when you believe that you first arrived?
Yes, sir.
And that note says 6:11:05. Could you continue, please, Ms. Gilman? Please watch to the left. Stop, please. Is that when you first arrived and walk over to help John O'Keefe?
Yes, sir. That's me.
I'll note that the timestamp is 6:11:21. Okay, continue, please. Stop, please. Did you see firefighter Flamati come after you?
Yes, sir.
Was any of this shown to you during those questions?
No, sir.
No. Continue, please.
Stop, please. Do you see the defendant in that screen?
Yes, sir.
Do you see her moving from right to left towards you?
Sustained as to the form.
Okay. What direction do you see her running in that screen from right to left?
She's running towards where the three of us are grouped.
Okay, please continue. Stop, please. Is it at that time the defendant said to you that she hit him?
Yes, sir.
And you remember that?
I do.
I'm done with the tape. Thank you very much. Now, you were asked questions about your memory.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you were asked the questions about Trooper Proctor, when you were saying that you didn't remember, were you referring to the conversation with Trooper Proctor, or were you suggesting you didn't remember what happened that morning?
I don't remember the interview with Trooper Proctor. I remember it happened. I don't remember the substance of what was discussed entirely. I remember we discussed that morning, but
do you know if that conversation was recorded or just a conversation between you and the trooper?
I do not know if it was recorded.
You asked questions. I want to ask you about questions on Mr. O'Keefe, and you mentioned that there was some type of blood clotting on the back of his head.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You noticed there were abrasions on his right arm.
Yes, sir.
You noticed there was a hematoma on the right side of his head.
Yes, sir.
Did you see any bruising on his right knee?
Don't recall, sir.
Did it stand out to you that all of his injuries, all of them that you saw, other than the cut on the back of the head, that they were all on his right side?
Yes, sir.
Did you notice any hematomas on his left side?
I did not.
Did you notice any scratches or abrasions on his left side?
I did not.
Did you notice any marks that would be consistent with an altercation on the left side of his body?
I did not.
You were asked about the cause, and you said that you don't know the cause. You weren't there, were you?
No, sir.
You asked if it was consistent with being punched, and you said it could be.
Yes, sir.
Could it be consistent with being clipped by a car?
Objection.
Sustained as to the form.
You were asked questions about clothing,
Yes, sir.
and you had at one point said you thought that Mr. O'Keefe was wearing a winter jacket. Do you have any memory that when you first got there, or when you first got there, do you have any memory whether there were any towels wrapped around Mr. O'Keefe's head?
I remember there was a white cloth of some sort on the scene.
Okay. And when you were asked about your memory regarding the clothing, was the clothing of what was utmost importance to you at that time?
No, sir.
And why is that?
I was, again, focused on Mr. O'Keefe's airway and ventilation.
Okay. And when you were asked about the clothing, do you remember if you added anything else about your certainty or uncertainty about clothing when you previously gave a statement or testimony?
I believe when I testified last year, I did note I had no part in removing any articles of clothing or anything like that. That was not my job in the back of the truck.
Do you remember any recognition of the fact whether you were certain or not about clothing?
Repeat the question, sir. Sorry.
So, is there anything that would refresh your memory about what you had said about clothing?
Objection.
Ask a different question first.
You had mentioned that you had some difficulty about clothing. Do you remember what you had previously said?
I remember there was some difficulty of getting the individual's fingers through clothing just because they were so cold. They were difficult to manipulate. Just they really was not conducive to getting clothing off easily.
You met with me 3 times.
Yes, sir.
I had not met you before any of your prior testimonies, had I?
No, sir.
Do you remember meeting with me and discussing this case with me?
I do.
Do you remember me asking you to tell me what you remember?
I do.
Do you remember what I told you about testimony when you come into court?
Yes, sir.
What would I tell you?
I remember we discussed that just tell the truth.
Did I tell you that it doesn't matter? There is no side. Doesn't matter if it helps or hurts, that you just tell the truth?
Sustained.
Did I ever suggest to you that you should stick to a story?
No, sir.
Did I ever suggest to you you should offer your testimony in any certain way?
No, sir.
When I talked to you, did I ever ask you to say anything about your testimony to this jury?
No, sir.
Other than what?
Speak to the jury.
Did I need to tell you to tell the truth?
No, sir.
And in telling the truth, did the defendant say to you, I hit him,
I'll allow it.
Yes, sir. 3 times.
And in fact, do you remember, in addition to her saying, I hit him, when you asked her the question, kneeling down over John O'Keefe's body, do you remember if you ever talked about other times that she said it, not to you?
I do not.
Okay.
The answer is I do not. Next question.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to go on to recross here.
And if it was neglected on my part, it was not intentional.
Not intentional to neglect that part. Breenan just asked you to generalize commotion, to use your phrase.
Mhm.
In the background, you didn't hear any specific words coming out of my client's mouth, did you?
I heard I hit him. But again, it was in the background and it was not my focus.
Well, why didn't you say that on direct? That's kind of an important point. That's why you're here.
Again, if it was neglected on my part, it was not intentional.
Not intentional to neglect that part for the jurors on direct examination.
No, sir.
Certainly not intentional to neglect that part of your testimony on cross-examination.
No, sir.
But you decided to bring it up on on re-cross-examination when Mr. Breenan is asking you questions again, correct?
It was asked of me.
And it was after, of course, that your new statement that you've never testified to before, ever, is this generalized commotion included a bunch of items in the background, correct?
Sir.
And that comes after you saw the video that clearly shows that when you described having heard this statement, my client was nowhere around you, correct?
That segment of the video that you showed me,
Yes.
that was not the time frame in which she said that to me.
Well, that was the time frame when Flamati was giving CPR, correct?
He was doing CPR down prior to that as well.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Well, you just testified that you saw him standing up in a big yellow jacket and then kneel down and start giving CPR. We just watched that video.
But again, the clip of the video that you showed me,
Right.
that was not the segment in which she said that to me.
Well, that's what you're saying now, but what I'm asking is, you described a very distinctive scene, a very, very specific scene.
Yes, sir. I remember it vividly.
She said, that I hit him frame when Flamati was down giving CPR and you were kneeling down giving airway support and he was doing rhythmic CPR chest compression.
Yes, sir. That's what happened.
And then I showed you that very scene, didn't I?
Yes, you showed me that clip prior to that.
I showed you the very scene that you described where Flamati gets down and starts chest compressions and never stops until the gurney is taken off the frame of the camera to the end. Isn't that what I showed you?
That is
Sure. I don't know if I can do it again. I showed you the scene where firefighter Flamati gets down on his knees, begins chest compressions, and never stops until that gurney is taken off camera, off frame, into the ambulance. That's the clip I showed you, correct?
that's the clip you showed me.
And that's exactly when you described your vivid memory from 3.5 years ago. That's exactly the scene that you described when my client supposedly said, I hit him to you, correct?
Again, the clip that you showed me, that was not when it was said. That segment that you showed, that was not when it was said. It was said prior to that, when the three of us were together.
So Flamati was not giving chest compressions then.
He was. The CPR was a continuous effort throughout the resuscitation.
But we saw him start it. Officer, firefighter Nuttall, we saw him start it. We saw him walk into the frame, kneel down, and begin the chest compressions, didn't we?
We did.
And at no point, at that time or after, did my client even approach you, did she, in that clip?
She did.
What?
Yeah, it's just.
Just a question.
Sure.
Wow.
Do you need to see the that clip again?
Yes, please.
And this
We're
is
not gonna show a video.
right. This is so crazy. how she
Two
does that.
videos. Which one
Wow.
was marked?
Wow.
The
The one
Commonwealth.
with the timestamp in
Right.
the top?
It's the exact same video. One has timestamp, one doesn't. Just to be clear, you described a very detailed scene in which firefighter Flamati got down on the ground on his knees and began CPR.
Yes, sir.
We saw a clip that was
I'm still here, Twiz. I don't know where everyone else went.
Mhm.
I wonder if their shadow banned again.
fully through. Correct?
Okay, but
Yes,
we're
sir.
gonna.
That was true and accurate.
This is just insane. Okay, so we're gonna skip to the end to where they get to the hearing, and actually, I want to hear where were they when she said we're done for the day. Hold on, let me just see here.
So as you approach Fairview, tell
I
us
think they were still on
what
direct.
happened.
As we approached Fairview at the house. You mean the house or the street?
Yes, the
The
house.
house. Jen said my sister's house is now screaming.
You heard the defendant scream, "There he is!"
No, it was just snow. See?
Yes.
I mean, the visibility wasn't great.
Okay. Was she pointing or giving any direction?
Looked over, I didn't see anything. And then I turned around,
Anywhere.
so looking around to see where he is. When I got to it, yes, it was.
I need these counselors. Yeah, so it seems like they're still on direct. So when they pick up tomorrow, it'll be with Carrie Roberts again. Yep. So they didn't even finish direct. Okay, so that answers that question, I believe. And then now we're going to get to the hearing, which again, I didn't. Wait, hold on. Just kidding. Let's see. Here she comes.
Please be seated, court is in session.
All right, so we'll have a quick hearing on
Okay, yeah. So
paper now,
That is it.
682.
they stop abruptly in during Carrie's testimony. Okay, so now the hearing, and I haven't seen this. I'm so excited.
And 680.
Woo!
First, Commonwealth's motion to enforce compliance with the court's April 16th, 2025 ARCA discovery order. Mr. Brennan, you said you could be brief on both of these, so I'll hear you.
Your Honor, I'll get right to the point. On the motion for compliance, our position is that the defense did not comply with your order. This has been an ongoing issue which relates directly to the credibility of potential ARCA witnesses. This is information based on the history and representations made in this case that we're entitled to. I did note before these were produced that we have watched video footage from unaired video from the documentary. We clearly knew that there were text messages and correspondence beyond what was represented to the court. It is not a surprise that I did receive these lists of text messages and calls after I made those comments. However, there is no text message content. There is 99 texts to Mr. Wolf, 6 texts to Mr. Rensselaer. That does not reconcile with the past positions and representations of the defense to this court and to the Commonwealth. In addition, there are a number of phone calls. And those phone calls, again, I would suggest do not reconcile with the past representations. We have 52 minutes of phone calls on 5 calls with the ARCA mainline, 133 minutes, 20 calls with Dr. Wolf, 57 minutes, 23 calls with Dr. Rensselaer. I find it difficult to accept that these were all for scheduling purposes. We also had your Honor's order, not just for the communications, which are not a complete or a fair production, but there was a order by the court to provide all correspondence, text messages, emails, not just with Attorney Jackson, but with the entire team, including the defendant, Karen Reed, and we have received nothing. This is important because if we look at the first half of ARCA's potential testimony, which is limited to their prior report, we cannot fairly and effectively cross-examine the witnesses until we have the information we're entitled, and that's why I've also asked and suggested that ARCA should be ordered and required to provide that evidence as well, so that we can see what is there. It is concerning that there are this many texts, this many phone calls, and the fact that this is totally in contrast to what was represented in the past. So before there's even a thought of ARCA testifying, I think we're entitled to the full discovery that we asked for, the full discovery that the court has ordered. I don't see anything to do with billing or anything else beyond these text message and phone call logs. I want whatever content is available. I think it's relevant material. It's pursuant to your order, and this is woefully incomplete. Should I dive into the second motion?
Yes.
Take a move quickly. The second motion, part of it is moot in some respects. I won't go through
Right,
the
because they
torture
can't
history
continue the
discovery.
trial
We've
now,
done this
huh?
many times. We don't have time for it, but inevitably it's clear that we have played by the rules, met our discovery obligations, and as we stand here now, the defense is proposing new opinions, new testing, and they don't even have the parts of that testing yet. This is 2 weeks into trial after we picked a jury. This is at the time of the opening. It is ambush. It is unfair, and we have no ability at this point to reconcile or deal with new opinions and new information. Importantly, the defense's position is they may or may not have a report by May 1st. Our expert will be testifying somewhere at the beginning or middle of May. He is away. He is not available. And so anything we receive at the beginning of May or end of April, we'll have no opportunity to look at, vet, test, reconcile, or even engage in our own testing. This was my concern all the way back in November. I'm not Nostradamus, but this obviously was something that worried me that actually
I'm
occurred.
not
And so at this
Nostradamus.
point,
Oh my God.
it would be fundamentally unfair.
Oh my God. He's not Nostradamus. Really? Really? I thought he was.
Saying this was my concern all the way back in November. I'm not Nostradamus, but this
Amazing.
obviously was something that worried me that actually occurred. And so at this point, it would be fundamentally unfair for the defense to get a benefit for failing to comply with discovery orders by waiting until February to seek permission with ARCA. They could have called any expert, asked for any expert they wanted. They didn't. They chose this method, and this is the consequence of it. And at some point, the defense has to bear the burden of their decisions. We will not have the ability to rush through, have Dr. Rensselaer come in days before his testimony, try to reconcile, be inadequate. I've had a brief correspondence with him. It's simply impossible. That's why we suggested, although we certainly didn't want to move the trial date, that was the only remedy if the court was going to allow any new opinions, evidence. I say to the court that they should not be allowed to offer absolutely anything new, not only because they missed the discovery deadline, that's technical, but the reality is we're all trial lawyers. We've all tried a lot of cases. It would be a disadvantage, fundamentally unfair, and because of their own choosing. And so anything new, we will not be able to reconcile. We would not be able to proceed with our expert in a fair manner. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Alessi's issue, I'm going to ask you to be as brief as you can be, please.
Your Honor, I understand your request to be as brief as possible, but this is the first opportunity the defense has had to respond to almost every allegation that's been made. We haven't had an opportunity.
Yes,
So
Mr.
I certainly respect the
Yes.
court and what the court's request is, but it is going to take a bit of time to put facts out. And I want to separate two categories that the Commonwealth has conflated. The Commonwealth has conflated the issue of what text messages exist, which text messages don't exist, what's been turned over pursuant to orders. And I would like that to be clear to the court factually, because the Commonwealth has misstated just now 3 times
your
the
word.
facts.
So I asked
Word.
this morning, there were 100 or so texts referenced in the exhibit, whatever was presented by you folks. I asked if Mr. Jackson, if he provided them, because my order was clear, they would be provided. And he said no. And I asked you at sidebar whether they were deleted. And you said yes, in due course. I have no idea what that means, Mr. Alessi. Why don't you explain that?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to explain. Here's what it means.
Huh.
Like anybody's phone, those text messages are 2 years old. They don't exist.
So can you also tell me, aren't the ABA guidelines the council is supposed to keep everything in a case for 5 or 7 years?
I do not believe that is the ABA rule with regard to experts. I'm unaware of that.
In regard to your client, and this was in regard to your client's case, right?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I didn't hear you.
Records kept regard to your client's case, which these are experts that were, there's 100 text messages leading up to trial when I was told that by you that there was a pause email, and then all of a sudden out of the blue, a bill appeared in July. This shows that's not true, Mr. Alessi.
Your Honor, that was a different question that Your Honor asked me back then. That was about emails. That was not about text messages.
Have emails been provided?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
All emails have been provided. And that is why we are in compliance with all orders. And I will say also with regard to text messages, we have provided pursuant to every order, every single text message that exists. Mr. Breenan just said, I believe there has to be more there. There's not more there, and I don't believe there can be an order of preclusion based upon the speculation of opposing counsel that there must be more. We affirmatively created a document, Your Honor, to be more transparent than the records, where we summarized all of the communications. Yes, we don't have the text of the text messages, but we were completely forthright and set forth every text that was made. Plus, we turned over from Ms. Little, the only other person on the defense team who communicated with ARCA, we turned over her texts and the text of her text messages. There is nothing else in existence to provide. And importantly, the defense was under no order to preserve the text of text messages.
So no, ARCA's not out, but what the Commonwealth was asking for was to preclude them from being able to offer opinions on any further testing that was done, or to continue the trial. Obviously, that one's out the door, but they're not going to be stopped from testifying. But I don't know fully what she's going to do here, because I haven't watched this part, because the court TV feed didn't include it. It ended when she sent the jury home. So we're learning together here.
And we have never received, as part of discovery in this case from the Commonwealth, any communications between the Commonwealth and its several experts. That has not been what has occurred in this case. But of course, once Your Honor on Friday issued that order to provide everything, we provided everything we can that we had. The bottom line is, Your Honor, we've turned over absolutely everything we have. And in addition to that, we created a document so that it would be easier. We're the one who showed all of these text messages from Mr. Jackson historically. We created that document. There's no basis for a discovery violation. There's no basis for an order violation. We are in full compliance. So that's the prong one, Your Honor. Prong one is what Mr. Breenan has alleged is incorrect, because we turned over, and we did it recently and consistently. We've turned over all emails and Ms. Little's text we provided. There are no text messages in 2024. And there's no order that required those to be preserved. And there is no discovery violation, because we can't be in violation of not turning over something that doesn't exist.
All right, go to the second.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Motion.
The second part of the motion, Your Honor, is the most maddening for the defense. And this is the timeline that I can go through very, very quickly. And essentially, what the Commonwealth just argued is we will be so prejudiced that if we get the work that ARCA is underway, working on, that we will be prejudiced because we won't have enough time to address it. Your Honor, the facts show that the timeline for this has been caused by the Commonwealth, not the defense. And I can do it quickly. July 2024, the first trial concludes. November 2024, 4 months later, the Commonwealth decides to retain Aperture. Their decision to wait 4 months to retain an expert, we're the defense. We defend what the Commonwealth alleges. January 30th, 2025.
Hold on.
2 months after that, and 6 months after the first trial, we get an Aperture letter report that's barely discernible about what they've done. It's a 1 page and 1/4 of conclusions and opinions in outline form. Next, January 31, 2025, we get the initial Aperture 140 slide presentation. January 31st, February 5th, we get the case file. In February of 2000, or February 19th, we finally get the raw images from Aperture and the scans. That's the first time we get raw images and scans. You can't have an expert work on anything until you even get those raw images in scans. We move, and we have a hearing on March 20, 2025 to preclude Dr. Welcher because the slides are so incoherent and the report is so insubstantial. We can't tell what it is their theory is. So then on March 24th, and at that hearing, the Commonwealth agrees to redact and revise that. So we're already into March 20th. The Commonwealth agrees to redact and revise. Your Honor put the defense on a short leash. We accepted it. And by March 24, we received the PowerPoint that was supposed of the Aperture that was supposed to have two things happen. It was supposed to be redacted, and there were certain things that were supposed to be changed. What did we get on March 24th? It wasn't redacted, and there were 3 substantive changes to it. The Commonwealth has said twice, including today, there were no substantive changes. There's 3 of them, and to the extent Your Honor wants to hear, I can detail exactly what those changes
So
were.
why don't you highlight them very quickly, because
I will, Your Honor. I can do it quickly. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wow.
First one, slide 36, they changed the image of 34 Fairview. No small change. 102, they changed the conclusion regarding the time that the tail light was broken. No small change. 123, they changed the image of 34 Fairview. No small change. So we ended up getting those changes, and I want to be clear on the date. That's March 24th. We have a hearing on March 25th. We agreed to provide our response to these revised Aperture documents. Here is the key data point. On March 26th, the defense engages ARCA. Just 2 days after we get the revised PowerPoint with 3 substantive changes. And then we started to respond and provide more information. On March 27th, we responded to the Commonwealth's revised PowerPoint and the Welcher report. And then the last 2 items, we renewed our request to preclude Dr. Welcher on Dalbert Lanigan grounds. April 1st, and this is another key date, the court decision allowed Dr. Welcher to testify, but also allowed the defense to re-raise objections at trial when Dr. Welcher testified. What does that timeline show? That timeline shows that the Commonwealth took 6 months from the last trial. 6 months. And the defense took merely 2 days after they got the final report of Aperture to retain ARCA. Last point I want to make, Your Honor, is the argument of the Commonwealth that we strategically waited to retain ARCA.
Right.
Nothing could be further from the truth.
Thank you.
As the court knows,
This is what I was saying.
been the case with this unorthodox situation. ARCA was retained by the U.S. government. They worked pursuant to the U.S. government, and we had to get the permission of the U.S. government to retain ARCA. We moved expeditiously to do that. We got the permission from the government, and as soon as we got the permission from the government, and as soon as we got the final version of Aperture documents, including scans, we put ARCA on it. It has only been since March 24th, not even a month have we had finally the information from Aperture, which is still inadequate.
Mhm.
Our experts still say, with regard to what Aperture did, in some instances, they can't even figure it out because the information is so inadequate. Nonetheless, because of all the considerations we're aware of, we had ARCA proceed forthwith with post haste. And they are working post haste. But, Your Honor, we are the defense. That's where I started. We had to understand as best we could what Aperture did. In conclusion, 2 points. No violation whatsoever on text messages, emails, court orders. All complete, robust compliance. And with regard to the allegation that there was something said, that there's some surprise that there were so many text messages, on June 10th, 2024, and I've got the transcript on an, albeit on an electronic device,
It's
right
fine.
in front of me. I just
Love
have the passcode. Mr. Jackson read a text message right live that he had with ARCA. He read it, and here's what it said. The court, okay, Mr. Lally. So her issue is that she is available this week, but not next week. So I really need to get her in on Friday. Mr. Jackson.
Hold on. The court reporter can't hear you. She asked you to stop.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Am I going too fast? Thank you. All right.
Wow, that's what she said.
Thank you. My apologies. So, Mr. Lally, so her issue is that she is available this week, but not next week. So I really need to get her in on Friday. Mr. Jackson. Dr. Wolf just texted me and said, I presumed you were in court. Give me a call when you're available. The court reporter, I'm getting an interference. Mr. Jackson, I'm so sorry. The court reporter, that's okay. We have been completely transparent that there were text messages, as opposed to emails, text messages about scheduling, about other administrative matters. Mr. Breenan is completely free on cross-examination of ARCA to address every one of his speculations, every one of his suspicions, every one of the ghosts that have been created on this topic. He can address them. If he thinks that we're wrong, we're misstating, he's got the opportunity to speak to ARCA and ask those questions. Your Honor, it is improvident to, based upon speculation, preclude the defense from putting in a defense.
I'm not making a conclusion today regarding precluding the
Okay,
defense.
all right.
So I need you to wrap it up because there's something I want to say.
Certainly, Your Honor, I'm going to wrap it up in 10 seconds. There are no violations of any discovery order, no violations of this court's order. And with regard to the retaining of ARCA, because we're the defense, we acted expeditiously in response to the information we're getting. And this can be tested with ARCA, this statement I'm going to make. To this date, ARCA still has trouble understanding what it is that Aperture did and didn't do, which was the reason for my Dalbert Lanigan motion, but we proceeded nonetheless. Happy to entertain responses to any questions.
All right. No, thank you. All right. So as you all know, I previously wanted to have a seat, Mr. Alessi.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I previously found and believe Mr. Alessi, when he was talking about the rules of professional conduct, did say, I agree, a violation of Rule 14, but not regarding rules of conduct. At a prior hearing, I found a violation of the defense's reciprocal discovery obligations. It was clear to me, and I found that it was deliberate. This appears to me, contrary to what you've argued, Mr. Alessi, that this is another violation of my order and of the reciprocal discovery violations. We need to figure all of this out before you're allowed to call these witnesses. So I'm going to have a voir dire hearing this Friday. I know we planned on having you. I need the ARCA witnesses here Friday morning. So we need a voir dire, if you intend to call them, a voir dire on all of this. And I will be sending an order for production of records. I just need to amend it.
That is very
for ARCA
true.
to bring all these items with them. So Friday will be for ARCA for a voir dire hearing in the morning. So we'll see you tomorrow for trial, Friday morning for this.
May I inquire?
And I will just say too, as far as like, if they can't exclude them, they want to limit them. I mean, and that's already been happening. They've already been limited in a number of ways, right? They've already been limited in a number of ways. So play.
Bring all these items with them. So Friday will be for ARCA for a voir dire hearing in the morning. So we'll see you tomorrow for trial, Friday morning for this.
May I inquire briefly for scheduling purposes?
Yes.
In light of the hearing on Friday, will it still be half a day, or are we expected to call witnesses on Friday?
No, it will be, if we could do, Mr. Lessie, how long do you think this voir dire might take?
I don't have an answer for you, Your Honor, right now, because I gotta talk to ARCA and I gotta understand what they have and what they don't have. So I think, in fairness, I think it can take some time.
All right.
to seriously-
So no witnesses for Friday, and I think we'll give the jury the day.
Okay.
And will it be a full day on Thursday?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes. All right. So we'll see you then. I will issue an order hopefully before the close of business today. Jimmy, can you stay and get this out today?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, so that means full day of voir dire on Friday, sounds like, in dealing with all this with ARCA. Okay, that'll be very interesting. Okay. Did we ever find out if they're still doing half days this time around? It seems like maybe they're not. But I can't recall if that was ever really fully discussed. So let me know if you guys happen to remember. But is anyone up for some Curb Your Enthusiasm in the Discord? I have the next batch of episodes ready. Right, they're still able to testify to everything from trial one. The only issue is about new testing ARCA. Right. Well, the only issue as far as what the defense. So I mean, there's been other issues like we had the issues with like the money and the payment and blah blah blah. But the other thing that sticks out to me was about the DOJ, the third being able to testify, like that the defense wanted to be able to say that they were a third party and, hired by like the DOJ or whatever, right? But not even getting into why. That was an issue that they wanted to be able to get into that they're not allowed to at this juncture. So there's that as well. But now, so in other words, they've been limited in that way already. And now what they're talking about is being able to get into the new testing. But we talked about this at the beginning of the stream because I read we read that document, and the testing and the reports and whatnot that were in response to Judd Welcher to rebut the Commonwealth's expert is what they're talking about here, because it's discovery. So now as far as the text messages and stuff go, like unless he was arguing it's fodder for cross, I mean, or we could be dealing maybe with some sort of sanctions again, but that's not, you can't, that's again sort of different than, that's more like, again, like a candor issue. But the discovery that's like results of any testing, that's a whole different thing. But Judge Bev even said that she gave them that deadline, or she didn't give them a deadline rather with that. She said, like, as it happens during trial, you have to turn it over. So yeah. Because of that, when I think back on it from that was from the previous hearing, like last week, when I think back on that, it would make it seem like she's going to deny the Commonwealth's motion to limit any of their testimony because she already decided it was fine. And they're almost trying to just be like, well, it's not fine because we didn't have these text messages. And it's like, they're two separate issues, right? We don't know yet. They're going to have a voir dire on Friday to find out. Twiz. All day Friday, they're going to have no witnesses and they're just going to be dealing with ARCA. So we don't know. But again, I'm just like thinking like she did say previously that it would be fine. Like we covered all that, and it was a surprising ruling, right? She was actually reasonable. She was like, yeah, they're getting new testing results in and whatnot, just turn it over when they have it, And she even said something like, we'll deal, as we go through trial, we'll handle it as it comes up. But right. And then we also saw, where was it? We read it in one of the things today, like where they said they would have it at the latest by May 1st, I believe is what they said. Is that a joke, Kane? Yeah, I mean, the only thing that could come is she could say they can't testify to any of the new results that are in rebuttal to Judd Welcher, right? I mean, that's what the Commonwealth wants. But having said that, she already said it was fine for them to turn over the stuff when they can. So it's really almost like the Commonwealth was making a request for her to reconsider. That's really what it kind of seems like to me, because she had already made that decision. Is that a joke, Kane? What is ARCA? I'm assuming that's a joke. The ARCA, the Crash Daddies, ARCA dudes, Hired by the, I'm sure that's gotta be a joke. Right. I mean, yeah, or maybe Breenan was hoping it would get continued. I mean, that's just crazy though. I don't know why he would think that would happen. But yeah, so is anybody wanting to go and watch some Curb in the Disquad? That's what we are doing. Are you saying, is that a yes? I'm thinking that's a yes. Right. Exactly. That is correct. Twist says, I mean, last time they were like, there's no way a car. Exactly. And that's exactly why Breenan is, terrified. And it's so funny too, because this whole time he's like, I'm not afraid of our girl. I'm not trying to stop them from testifying. And then of course, right after that, it's like trying to stop them from testifying. There's clearly Brian Higgins in the basement with a dog. So we will head on over to the Discord then. For anyone who hasn't done it yet and is interested in joining us for some Curb Your Enthusiasm, easy peasy. Just go to the Discord, and on the left, where the threads are and whatnot, scroll down to the bottom and you'll see Squirrely Viewing Party, and you just click on that, and that's all you have to do. And then you're welcome to join with your microphone if you want to, or you don't have to, you can mute it. And there's also the live chat where you can type in there. And yeah, so we're going to do that. But, and then of course, as far as tomorrow goes, it looks like most people were saying do it in the evening. So yeah, but we will be covering, of course, the rest of that. There's other stuff too to get caught up on. However, I don't think there's any point in having another live stream while the trial is happening, because everyone's going to be watching it. So anywho, love y'all. I'm going to go ahead. Oh, and the other thing, just before I forget to, we're going to follow up on the jurors speaking out as well for Lori Vallow. So there's that too. But anywho, but yeah, thanks for being here as always. I'm going to go ahead and roll the outro. And for those of you guys who want to join us for the in the Discord, we'll see y'all in a sec.